You're all good.
All righty. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the April full board meeting for Manhattan Community Board 4. My name is Jeffrey LeFrancois, and it's a distinct privilege, as always, to be calling this meeting to order this evening. Continuing in the vein as we have by order of the New York Governor, the in-person meeting requirements of the Open Meetings Law have been suspended until April 15th. All of our committee and full board meetings will be held virtually until that date, and please stay tuned for updates later in the meeting and to learn how the board will be moving forward with meetings once the order is lifted. Tonight's meeting is being live streamed on our YouTube channel, and a transcript is also being recorded. A copy of the meeting can be made available by any member of the media for cable broadcast purposes. As always, members of the public will be given the ability to speak tonight during the public session by signing up in advance on our website, or they'll have the opportunity to raise their hands at the beginning of the session to be added to the queue. Our first Vice Chair, Jessica Chait, will be moderating that session. Our agenda for tonight's meeting can be found on the Board 4 website, mcb4.nyc. And I want to just take a minute or two, just not 2 minutes, 1 minute. I want to give a specific shout out at the top of the meeting to our board staff. Our district manager, Jesse Bodine, Nelly Gonzalez, and Janine Bertante, managing with aplomb the execution day by day of this good community board for the past 2 years and in years before then, getting us through what we have. Many of you, I think all board members, and I hope many of the public receive our newsletters, which are powerhouses of information about what's happening in our community. And that wouldn't be possible without the good work of our team. They're also the reason these meetings run with such function, that our meetings make it to our YouTube channel so efficiently and so effectively. And so I just want to share that, give them real praise tonight. And note that with sort of the coming changes, beg everybody's patience as we will all be navigating some changes coming up in the month ahead together. But I'd be remiss not to give them a major shout out at this point in time. Also in that vein of board communications, we recently put out the curb usage and utilization survey. This was something that came out of our transportation committee, which was debated and worked through on a myriad of issues that wrangle for and fight for the curb. It's a type of real estate, so of course we understand that as a hot commodity. I'm saying this tonight because I want to encourage all of you to please take that survey, as well as the members of the public who received it. Some of the feedback I've received early on is that it seems complicated and confusing, and my response is, well, it's about things in New York City, so of course. But please read the directions, take time to go through it slowly. The purpose of the survey is to get you to think comprehensively about the value of that space, and you're asked to rank things 1 through 5. So we want to see how many things percolate up on folks' lists as 1s, as 2s, as 3s, as 4s, as 5s, so we can begin to develop positions and think more thoroughly about space outside. So if you haven't opened it, please do so and spread the word as well. So with that out, I want to go to our first item on the agenda this evening, which is a visit from Inspector Robert O'Hare from Midtown South Precinct. To the good inspector, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me. Good evening, everybody.
Absolutely. Go right ahead, sir. The floor is yours.
Okay, so it's been a while. I see some familiar faces out there. Good evening to everyone. I've gone through a lot of things over the last year with the community board, last year and a half, working with the community council rather. And one of the things, since I do see some faces I'm not familiar with, I just want to go through this if you beg me, if you pardon me rather. When we talk about our crime numbers, and I'll get to that in a minute, they're not just crime numbers. Behind every number is sadly a victim. And that doesn't lose anything here with any members of my command. We're all very cognizant that behind these incidents are victims. I think if you happen to peruse the papers in the last week or so, Midtown Precinct South sadly has been in the papers for some bad incidents, but coupled with that, what's sometimes doesn't get reflected is actually the great work that has been done by the members of this precinct, apprehending these people who are victimizing our victims. We had that tourist last week who literally just arrived into New York City minutes before, getting off a train at Penn Station, walking with her two daughters northbound on 9th Avenue, and gets stripped to the ground by an individual, causing she sustained injuries that were pretty significant. 72 years old. In New York City, maybe 5-10 minutes. I mean, we're right around the corner from Penn Station. I'm sure everyone's aware of. We were in the paper today for an individual that started setting fires, one on the street and one inside of a train station. The members of Midtown South quickly recognized this individual. I passed that along to the members of our arson explosion squad. We shared that with our partners in MTA and Amtrak. Once that was shared, within less than an hour, Amtrak spotted that individual, held on to that individual to the members of my arson explosion squad could show up and place that individual under arrest. That individual is known to start fires and sadly is out walking around yet again tonight. Hopefully not starting any more fires. That hit the papers also today. So looking at where we're at right now for the 28-day period, which if you're not familiar with, the department measures things in 28-day and 56-day, as well as weekly and year-to-date. So for the 28-day period, we're up almost 40% in crime. What's definitely concerning for the 28-day, we're up 3 robberies, 36 over 33. Felony assaults, 20, where there's the one category, thankfully, we're doing well compared to last year, where we have 26 felony assaults versus 43 last year for the 28-day period. Burglaries are up. We're up 20, 51 over 31 for the 28-day. Grand larcenies, 161 over 88. We're up. That's almost twice the amount. We have 6 GLAs versus 7 this last year. So that's 284 crimes versus 203 last year. For the year, we're up nearly 51% in crime. What's driving that is our robberies. We're up 30 in our robberies, 120 versus 90. Felony assaults, again, we're down 35%, doing very well, 69 versus 106. Burglaries up 154 versus 100 last year. It's a 54% increase. And grand larcenies, 493 versus 252. That's a 96% increase. GLAs, 13 versus 16. We're down 18%. We had 4 of them this week. I can't really comment on that. That's active, very active investigation. What I can say is 2 of them recovered and out of state. I passed that investigation on to the members of our auto crime division. Very active case. So I'm sorry I can't get into too much into that. The grand larcenies, I knew at this point last year, going back to January. If we go back to last year, there wasn't that many people traveling sadly into Midtown, and we knew this was going to happen. People have thankfully returned to Midtown, but coupled with that is also the increase in grand larcenies. Some of the grand larcenies are very simply, I left my laptop unattended, I turned around and it was gone, as well as picks and dips of individuals or people using someone else's credit card. Those have, we knew these were going to increase this year. Also, you had a lot of the commercial establishments, they were closed. So now when people go in and they do a shoplift, some of them are grand larcenies, over $1,000 worth of products removed from the store. Definitely concerning is the robberies. What's really driving that is the shoplifts gone bad. Shoplifts gone bad. It starts out, they see a worker in the store, a security member, either one, they actively use force to get away from them, or they make a statement to the effect of, if you come near me, I'll stab you, I'll hurt you, which now by making that statement, that becomes a robbery. Burglaries are very concerning. We have commercial burglaries going on at night. I can only implore, we pull the videos and they're pulling on doors and breaking these doors open. I send my crime prevention out afterwards to follow up with these places. They need to install better locks. That's what it comes down to. They're able to pop these commercial doors to open after 2-3 tugs on the glass, and pop, they open, and in they go to remove whatever items that they can readily grab and move on. We've had additional resources flown in You might see them in the Penn Station, Herald Square district. They're here every night of the week. They're out there from about 6 o'clock at night. Those are additional resources. They are not Midtown South personnel. They are personnel that have been extracted from other units and sent here on a nightly basis. We continue to have the 8th Avenue crime reduction, albeit that was reduced. That was 7 nights a week. It's down to 3 nights a week, Friday to Sunday. That is the 8th and 9th Avenue corridor going from 36th Street up to our border on 45th Street. So it's a large area to cover. That was reduced to 8 police officers compared to I had 24 in that same zone up until the first few weeks of January. As far as Times Square, there's a still continuous deployment there from around the city during the day tour, the 2nd platoon and the 3rd platoon, so 7 o'clock and 3 o'clock. And those resources remain out there at night until the executive, the captain or above that's in charge decides to dismiss them. Obviously, with crowds, we'll hold on to them longer. That's something we're going to have to look at going forward very soon because the temperature will be creeping up at night. And if the warmer it is, the more people stay out in those pedestrian plazas. So I can just assure everyone the work is being done here. I gave you the crime numbers. So arrest in Midtown South, we are up 37% in arrests this year. 1,481 arrests versus 1,084 last year. The troops are working here. There's a lot of obstacles, if you will, that we hit post-arrest, but there is no doubt the work is being done here, not only by members of Midtown South, my detective squad. You heard about my arson explosions squad, yes, when I started my talk here, as well as members of my narcotics teams. We had a couple major takedowns last year with the assistance of our members assigned to narcotics. Some of those cases were right in the 43rd Street area, 8th Avenue corridor. These are individuals that are out there selling. These aren't people that are using. These are people that are actively selling, and with some of them came also violence. So there's been a lot of good work done. There's still a lot of work to be done. Quality of life, that's something I've been very heavy on with my cops since last year. Individuals urinating on the street, drinking alcohol on the street. Our contacts with these individuals, just to give you a picture, we have 675 oath summonses, which is civil in nature, versus 32 last year. We really stepped it up. 220 criminal court summonses versus 140 of last year. So I've tasked people with going out, engaging people who are committing these violations, and I think the troops have really stepped up. And I can honestly say that's what drove our violence down. If you look last year, our assaults along the 8th Avenue corridor, I fully believe that our contact with addressing these lower end violations and continuously policing that area has contributed to the decrease in the felony assaults. And again, like I said earlier, these are not just numbers. Behind those incidents are victims every single time. So that's something we will continue to do. We've expanded it to other areas of the command, and certainly it seems to be working as far as our felony assaults, our robberies. Again, very difficult as far as these commercial establishments where they go in and threaten the use of force. The arrests are being made. We're meeting certain obstacles thereafter.
Thank you, Inspector, for that. I have a couple of quick, brief questions, one further explanation, if you don't mind. So, shoplifting to robbery, I heard you explain a bit of a difference in definition there. The elevation is that a threat is made, and this is just for me, I understand the definition of the crime is really what I was seeking. So shoplifting is grab and run and you're caught doing that. If there's a threat is when it becomes a robbery. Did I understand your?
If there's a threat or there's an actual weapon displayed, or you actually use physical force. So
Got it.
Security goes to stop the individual. Now the perpetrator starts physically assaulting the other individual.
Okay, thank you for that. That was I hadn't heard the difference in the definitions there, so thank you. On the 8th Avenue corridor, why was that reduced from 7 to 3 days a week? Was that a precinct or a downtown decision?
Downtown decision.
We have long advocated for an increase in foot patrol for various reasons. So when did that take effect? Was that a recent change?
That was nearing probably on or about the fourth week of January.
Oh, so it's been a couple of months already.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. And my final question is, in terms of, the area that you cover, Midtown South, roughly what are those boundaries, sir? Just so everybody has the understanding.
So there's a couple cutouts, but for the most part, it's 29th Street on the north side to the south side of 45th Street, east side of 9th Avenue, over to Lexington. But there's some cutouts in the middle.
Sure, the jigsaw puzzle of boundaries in Manhattan. Yeah. So I guess that's kind of super helpful. And I wonder, we know that the city is dispatching some of the mental health providers as it relates to 911 calls for emotionally disturbed persons or other reports. And I wonder if Midtown South has been assigned any folks from that sort of nascent division, or if there's any partnerships you're seeing or experiencing in some of the changes of approach.
As far as someone being assigned out here, I haven't seen that. You do have organizations that I have seen out there offering services to the homeless. Sadly, more times than not, those services are turned down. My offices.
Yeah, I know. We're well aware of that. I was just curious if you were seeing any direct support from the mental health providers that the city are trying to get to respond to 911 calls or be partners with the PD in that outreach.
I don't have any direct knowledge of that.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'm going to go to hands as they rose. So we'll go to Christine first and then Tina.
Yes, Inspector, I have a question. When we have a lot of comparison to last year, but do we have any comparison to 2019? Because obviously that is the last time that, it was kind of business as usual. Are we way above in crime from 2019?
Going back 2 years, the overall, while I said we're up almost 51% this year, if you look back 2 years, it's 57%.
From 22 to 19?
Versus 2 years, 2020. If you go back 5 years, we're up 39%.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, Christine. Tina?
Hi, thank you for being here. I'm wondering, do you have a sense of how many perpetrators are repeat offenders? It seems that people get arrested back out in the street. They get arrested back. It seems like an endless cycle. Do you have a sense of the percentage?
That are arrested in Midtown South?
That are repeat offenders.
I don't necessarily break it down that way. I do look at everyone that does get arrested and what their criminal histories are. Some of them are what I call travelers, if you will. They not only get arrested in Midtown South, they get arrested in any other various commands, not only within Manhattan, but certainly around the city. I have several thousand people that I follow that I get alerts on, wherever they get arrested, if New York City. So I never really count as far as how many are repeaters here. We do have I do have a list of our top people who commit crimes here, but you have to keep in mind they very likely go to another command also.
Yeah, because I'm just wondering what could be. It seems like an endless cycle of, quite often the same people, they get arrested, and what measures can we take to correct this, the situation here? Well,
that you would have to go to your elected leaders and seek reforms out there. As far as the police department can only do what we can do. Once that individual hits arraignment, that is out of our hands at that point. We present the best possible case that we can for prosecution, and where it goes after that, the police department does not have a say.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tina. Just so everybody knows, Katie will have the last question, but I just want to remind everybody, as always, of the Precinct Community Council meetings that happen each month. And at the end of the session, I'll have the inspector share what month of the week those are. So Roberta?
Inspector, thank you for the presentation. I had a question about one of the stats that you reported. You noted that year-over-year arrests are up approximately 37%. And I was wondering if you could detail what comprises those arrests, what particular offenses people are being arrested for primarily. Thanks.
They're being arrested for crimes that are being committed. Do I have a breakdown? There's numerous charges in the penal law. I don't have a breakdown of every one. You know, certainly a driving factor here in Midtown South is the petty larcenies, the, you know, shoplifting, your routine shoplifting from the stores. But encompassing those is also robberies, burglaries. There's any number of offenses down to someone driving with a suspended driver's license, which is an unclassified misdemeanor in the VTL, vehicle traffic law. So I would have to really the list would be quite extensive as far as you would have to include, like I just referenced, the individual getting locked up for arson. So I guess we could start with the A's and work our way all the way through.
Appreciate it. There's no particular pattern that you've seen.
Pattern as far as what?
A trend of increased arrests relating to a particular crime or a particular charge.
We put together patterns, but that's not how we try. Patterns are put together for similar incidents involving the same or what we believe to be the same people. That's how we create a pattern. So if Rob O'Hare is doing burglaries throughout the night and we have images and we know it's Rob O'Hare, that would be a pattern. Individuals acting in the, you know, doing the same type of incident, if you will.
Thank you. Alice?
Hi, good evening, Inspector. I wanted to ask two questions. The first is there a way for us to get a copy of the statistics that you provided this evening? And then second is, in regards to the robbery or grand larceny that you spoke about, do you have an idea why there is such a large increase and how we might be able to digest that information?
Okay, as far as the crime stats, those are made publicly available to the public. CompStat 2.0, they get published about every week. Those are publicly available. You can attain them through the NYPD database website. It'll guide you into it. I don't know how to walk myself personally through it because I have access to something else, but those are all publicly available numbers. And
yeah, Alice, it's very, Inspector, if you just Google the precinct name or number on the precinct's homepage, you can download that data week by week.
Thank you.
Sure.
And the second part of your question was, I got part of it pertaining to shoplifts, you said, or?
The grand larceny, the attempted robbery. Do we have any indication of why there's such a huge spike?
Well, what's driving the robberies, as I said, it's the what we refer to as shoplifts gone bad. That's driving it. And the grand larcenies, sadly, the more people that are around, grand larceny has many, many different subdivisions. It could be I left my credit cards in a machine, someone took it and went and used my credit card. It could be grand larceny by fraud. There's a whole litany of different things, but part of it is we thankfully have an increase of people visiting Midtown, but coupled with that, it's unattended property, as well as individuals going into an establishment and removing items that are in excess of $1,000. I just had one earlier today, got reported. The company hires office cleaners. Well, the office cleaners were there last night, and when the owner of the business returned this morning, 3 of his laptops are gone. So that's another indicator right there. You know, property's available, and unfortunately, somebody took it.
My apologies. Maybe I'm using the wrong term. So there was an attempted robbery in my building twice in the last 2 months. One of the units above me got broken into. So I guess I used the wrong term. Maybe it's attempted robbery or a break-in, maybe. Was there an increase? That would be a burglary. Burglary. Okay, sorry. Was the increase in burglary? Is there a reason why we can understand why there's an increase in that?
Part of it is, oh boy. Part of it is we used to be able to catch a burglar And that burglar, more times than not, especially the repeat pattern burglars, they would be sent off to Rikers Island. When you catch these individuals now, unless it's a mitigated circumstance, they're coming right back out. So as soon as they're arraigned, they're given a date to appeal later on, and they come right back out.
Okay.
Alice,
thank
I would
you.
definitely encourage you to attend. I'm not sure if you live in Midtown South or not, or which precinct you live in, but I would definitely encourage you to attend a community precinct council meeting. Also information you can find right on the precinct's homepage.
Yes, I definitely will. Thank you so much.
Sure. And Katie.
Thanks. Just two quick questions, and thank you for taking the time to give us this presentation. I just had a question. Can you tell us for narcotics arrests in in the district, what the percentage is compared to 2 years ago? Because I didn't hear that number. And then the other question was about the 8th Avenue Crime Reduction Team. I know you said that the decision was made downtown about the reduction in the hours or the days. And I was wondering, so just as Jeffrey mentioned, we're very interested in more foot patrols, not less. And where would the right place be for us to advocate for an increase in the days? It sounds like you're saying maybe downtown too. Is that right?
Downtown, your elected leaders to, bring their concerns, your concerns to the police department overall.
Yeah.
We also have to understand there's a finite number as far as how many cops do we have and how much can we afford to pay everybody. Ideally, everyone would love a cop on every corner, just not possible. We run out of resources. Did that factor into it? I don't know. Did it factor in that our felony assaults along that corridor had dropped? Possibly. I don't know.
And the narcotics numbers?
The narcotics numbers. So I'm looking year to date under arrest. We have 374 narcotic related arrests versus 177 last year at this time. So that's an increase of 111%.
Okay, and in the 28-day period?
28-day, 104 versus 65. That's a 60% increase.
Okay.
And
Great,
I'm curious, the 5-year number, sir?
The 5-year, we are up. I don't have the actual number, but the 5-year shows me being up 47%.
Okay. Thank you.
And again, that's a lot of the complaints that not only I see, certainly the community sees along these areas, and we're going where the problems are, trying to address those problems.
Well, again, thank you for being here tonight. What night of the week, sir? What night of the month is your community precinct council meeting?
Those are on the third Wednesday of the month, except during the summit times. I'm sorry, I'm going back to my old command. Fourth Tuesday of the month. Okay, we've been doing them via Zoom as everything else. Our next one is April 26th. Time? 6:30. The usual 6:30.
April 26th at 6:30. Again, everybody, Midtown South. Inspector, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, everyone. Have a safe evening. Besides the community council, also, if you look up on the department website, there's what's called build-a-block meetings. We have 5 sectors in Midtown South. Each respective sector hosts their own meeting. They do one per quarter. So if you live in that sector or have a business in that sector or are interested in what's going on in that sector, we put those out. We tweet that information out. It's on the website also when those meetings are coming up. Again, those have been done virtually, so you're more than welcome to attend. That's another resource of information, if you will.
Thank you again. Appreciate that. And thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night. Stay well.
You too. All righty. On to the next portion of our agenda. I just need to find my tabs. Comments on the mayor's fiscal year 2023 preliminary budget. As is custom, the second vice chair of our community board is chair of the budget task force and oversees and manages all of the budget actions that we take as a community board, whether it be response to the mayor, the city council, or our statement of district needs. So for this portion of the meeting, I'm going to pass it over to our second vice chair, Leslie Bogosian Murphy.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And you are correct. This is the public hearing on the mayor's preliminary budget, which actually was released in February. This is for the fiscal year 2023, which I believe it begins July 1st this summer. So we have examined it as a community board through our budget task force, and we have written our budget response letter, which will be presented later this evening in further detail. But at this time, we would like to, I guess, formally invite the public to comment on the mayor's $90+ billion budget proposal for the city. So I have a list, Jesse. I just saw one person signed up to speak on this, Katie Savage, unless you have any additions.
And unless there's anybody that would like to raise their hand during the session, but yeah, Katie was the only one that signed up in advance.
Okay, is she over yet?
Yes, she's here.
Oh, hey, Katie. So everyone, or in this case, Katie, has 2 minutes to speak. So Katie, your time starts now.
Hi, my name is Katie Savage, Hell's Kitchen resident and founder of the Hell's Kitchen Litter Legion. I just want to comment on the fact that the mayor is proposing to reduce sanitation's budget by around $50 million. This will mostly be pulled from corner basket pickup, and the expansion of the composting program has been halted, which means our district will not get composting for the foreseeable future, and probably not until a mandatory composting law is put into place. As far as litter basket pickup, we saw the impacts of what that did during the FY21 budget. And a big issue is the fact that those weekly pickups are not part of the baseline budget. So they figure out the number every year. And because it's only a one-year addition, it's paid for with overtime, which is ridiculous and incredibly short-sighted. So I think this is something that would be great for the community board to focus on in the future. Or, you know, I know it's a little late for you guys to comment on the budget, but this is something that's really important in the longevity of our Department of Sanitation, and also making sure we're not wasting money by only planning 1 year out instead of planning for multi-years and not spending overtime money. I think it would be a much better usage of our funds. That's all.
Thank you, Katie. I think that's it. Jesse,
Okay.
do you see anyone, anyone from the public, are there hands raised for
There's
this?
no hands raised for this topic.
Okay, so then I will close this portion of the meeting and the public hearing. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Leslie. And just so folks know, item 20, we will be voting on later this evening, which is a response to the mayor's preliminary budget from our board. And for those tracking in real time, the council has released its response as well, its proposed budget. So the dance begins. So stay tuned for our discussion on that as well. Now I'd like to kick off our formal public session and pass the mic over to our first vice chair, Jessica Chait, who'll be chairing that portion of the meeting. Jessica?
Great, thank you, Jeffrey, and good evening, everyone. We are going to start. We have just a few folks signed up, so if you are interested in speaking, we'll give you the next 2 minutes to raise your hand. But Jesse, if we can start by welcoming Huntley Gill and then Miguel Acevedo. And as a reminder for everyone, we have 2 minutes that we will give you to offer your comments.
Huntley should be over. Huntley, you with us? Nope, he is not. Hold on, I'll try again. Huntley, you need to accept when I bring you over. There we go. Thank you.
And Huntley, if you are now, yeah, there we go. If you are ready, you look like you're off mute. Yeah, you can begin with your 2 minutes.
I don't really have anything to say unless it's in response to things that other people have to say about the issue.
Sorry, you signed up for the public session. So if you don't have remarks, then we will, or maybe that was, you did not, okay.
I'll shut up.
So we'll, thank you. We'll go to Miguel and then Missy Adams after Miguel.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Miguel Acevedo. I'm the TA president at Robin Fulton Houses. I have 2 concerns that I want to bring up. One is the construction on 9th Avenue that's been going on for years. It goes on literally now 24 hours a day. The residents here are complaining that the noise is unbearable. Then we have the clubs that are located on 16th Street and 9th Avenue that cause a backup of traffic all the way up to 23rd Street, and the honkies or horns don't stop. I would appreciate if something is done about that, or the board can reach out who it needs to reach out, whether it's a local precinct to put a police car on 9th Avenue and 16th Street to prevent this traffic to being such a backup. The other thing I want to bring up is bail reform. As the inspector mentioned, that it's a revolving door now with crime. As a person who represents the Black and brown community the most that reside in Chelsea and probably live with the most poverty level, who I know bail reform was put in place to give them the opportunity to not be in jail unnecessary. But sometimes incarceration has to be done, because as we see, people are being released daily with gun charges. About 3 weeks ago here at Fulton House, an individual killed somebody on 19th Street and 9th Avenue who was released on a gun charge. So he was able to come out, kill somebody, an innocent person who had nothing to do with the incident. This has to come to the end. The board has to reach out to the elected officials representing us in the state. If not, bail reform is going to cause more issues on crime. We're going to lose more businesses, like we lost 3 Rite Aids in the last 2 months because nothing was being done on when they were breaking into these businesses or going in there and walking out with merchandise. They were getting released. Here at Fulton Houses, we have issues with homeless people living in our developments, assaulting residents, and they're right back out. And my residents are living in fear. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Miguel. We have Missy, and then we have Missy Adams, followed by, it looks like a representative from Factory 360. Missy, are you with us?
Missy, you have to go off. You have to go off mute, Missy.
There you go. Can you
We
hear
can
me?
hear you. Yep,
Okay.
your 2 minutes starts now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. My name's Missy Adams, and I live on 9th Avenue near 20th Street in the Chelsea Historic District. I've lived here for more than 20 years, and over that time, I've walked down 20th Street several times a day, almost every day, past the transvestite prostitutes that used to park in front of the seminary with their clients, and the man with the overfilled campers that couldn't be moved, and the woman who lived in a box near 10th Avenue and hooked her TV up to the lamppost. And the neighbors, it would take 40 minutes to walk down the block for all the hellos and how's everything. So I often sat on the stoop at 419 while waiting for parking and chatted with the woman who lived there. So as reluctant as I am to speak on this, I have to object to the proposed fencing. Not only is it diminishing the look of the buildings and in my opinion unattractive, it doesn't make the houses any safer. Adding fence puts it at odds with the stoops further down the block at the hotel, which are similar. And none of the original curved entrance steps and railings on that side of the block were designed to have gates. Putting them in will make the buildings look barricaded and incongruous. Furthermore, fencing will have no effect on safety. Quite the opposite. People can still access the stoops, so the fences would in fact afford protection to someone looking to camp there. The thing is, I haven't seen anyone hanging out or sleeping on the stoops anywhere on the block. The homeless and others currently flock to the dark restaurant structures as their preferred venue. So I asked my neighbors to reconsider, and I asked the board to vote against the gates. They're historic, the block is beautiful and the entrances are historical and beautiful, and they shouldn't be changed. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. We have a representative from Factory 360.
I don't
do you know who that is?
I don't know who that is. If they're in the attendee section and want to raise their hand, I can bring them over, but why don't we move on?
Okay, then we have Anna Mani.
I don't seem to have Anna Mani either. I think Wendy.
Okay, well, we do have Lisa Wager. So Lisa, we will give you your 2 minutes.
Thank you. And oh, wait, I'm sorry. Let me reset my timer here. So I'd be super grateful if I could have an extra 15 seconds because I read this out loud to myself and it's 2 minutes and 15 seconds.
Right, let's get started.
Hi, I'm Lisa Wager. I'm the Director of Government Community Relations at the Fashion Institute of Technology, the SUNY College on 27th Street between 7th and 8th. And as we head towards Earth Day, we've got a few green notes to talk about. I'm pleased to share that we just compelled our 16th annual Sustainable Business and Design Conference, Pathways to Impact, this week. It just wrapped up its 2-day run a few minutes ago. And these conferences are part of our commitment to teaching sustainability practices in all of our programs, and also the college's own best practices for all of its operations, from student projects to faculty and staff initiatives, and of course in our campus facilities and our green roofs. This year's conference focused on the intersectionality of sustainability practices and how these cross impacts can be explored and leveraged for greater green gains. It's archived, and you can watch the keynotes, the talks, and the panel discussions featuring leaders in numerous areas of sustainability, such as Patrick Duffy, founder of Global Fashion Exchange, and Alexandra Gosuski, who's the co-founder and the COO of AlgaeKnit, which is a company that creates fibers out of algae. And this technology was developed by undergrads at FIT, and then they capitalized it after graduation. And also there's faculty and students who speak in this conference. And speaking of undergrad projects that turned into professional ventures, Wearwool is a textile design firm founded by an FIT now alum, Chinlian Lee, and based in New York City, that designs fibers at the DNA level by tailoring color, elasticity, and moisture. And the technology was one of 5 trailblazing innovations that was recognized last month and got a share of a $525,000 prize from something called Conservation X Labs Microfiber Innovation Challenge. And this is about recognizing innovations that can reduce or prevent microfiber pollution. I don't know if you saw the front page of I Get the Physical paper, of course, the Times Science section yesterday, but the whole article was on microfiber pollution and how it's drifting down and what it's doing in the ocean. So there's scientific evidence also linking inhalation and lung damage in humans. It's estimated that we each consume a credit card's worth of plastic every week. So Wearwool's design technology, which reduces microfibers by not using them in textiles, will make a real difference for what we breathe and also for what happens in the oceans. So that's pretty cool. And they learned it at FIT. Thank you. Public College.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. We have Wendy Solom, and then maybe Shelley Rosen is part of Factory 360.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay.
We can hear you.
Wonderful.
Your 2 minutes starts now.
Okay, great. Just set my timer. My name, as you said, is Wendy Solom, and I'm testifying on tonight's letter about the proposed gates for the 3 row house entrances at the General Theological Seminary. I've been in New York for 40 years, and I've been in Chelsea on close to that block now for 13 years, and I love walking past it. I believe it's just beautiful. I fully understand that landmarking isn't supposed to freeze buildings or neighborhoods in time, but it should definitely protect historic architecture like this from harmful changes that don't really have a strong reason. The proposal drawings that I saw show the gates won't make a subtle difference. It's more like the difference between an emoji face with a big smile and one with a horizontal line for a mouth. There has to be a better way of dealing with homeless people camping out on the stoops. I've noticed that on the rare occasions we do have homeless people sleeping in the streets in our neighborhood, they move on before too long, before they become permanent fixtures, unlike the proposed gates, which will be permanent fixtures, even though they were stated that they would not be, they'd be temporary or possibly removable. I just think that there are plenty of gated communities to choose from in other places. This is New York. We do have some homeless people. As New York, it is also cyclical. So this should not be a shock to anyone. They will come, but they will also go. And I just don't think that it should force us to suddenly spoil the beauty of architecture that really has given so much grace and pleasure to this community for over a century. The gates will give these beautiful, exquisite homes a defensive quality, and it's going to make one of the loveliest streets in the city feel just a little less open and friendly. And I really would like to ask the board, please change the draft letter, advise the Landmarks Preservation Committee, do not approve these gates. And thank you for listening. Oh, and Miguel Acevedo, thank you for your point too with the crime. I've been working with the NYPD. I agree with you 100%. Thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you, Wendy. We'll go to Shelley Rosen, and then we'll end with Tina.
Hi, can you hear me now?
We can hear you. We can see you a little bit too. Your 2 minutes starts
Okay,
now.
a little bit. I know it's a little dark in here. My name is Shelley Rosen. I'm a resident of Penn South, and I'm here to speak for and advocate for a proposed temporary dog run on 25th Street between 8th and 9th Avenue as the West Side Chelsea dog run is being renovated, and there's no place for residents, families with dogs to bring their dogs to play off leash. As you know, dogs are required to be on leash all the time, but they really do need socialization and exercise. And so I started a petition. I know there's a lot of support for it. We're already up to over almost 300 signatures, and I know some people are a little nervous about, is it going to be noisy? Is it going to be, well maintained? And having been at many dog runs, I can say that they're not any noisier than playgrounds, and generally it's a great way to promote community and to share resources with dogs who can't advocate for themselves and their families. So I'm here to advocate for both, and we're excited about this possibility. So that's basically what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Shelley.
Sure.
I'd like to find the dog that can advocate for itself. Tina, we'll turn it to you to conclude with 2 minutes.
Okay, I have a concern. I don't know if anybody noticed, but sometimes there are these little white styrofoam balls that kind of fly through the air and land on the street and then get washed away into the sewer. And I always wondered where this was coming from. And I always thought it was construction. Well, having the construction still going on next to me, I can say that it is from construction, and it's very worrisome because it eventually does go through the sewer system and into, anyway, it's just environmentally unsound. And my understanding is that the DOB basically dictates how the sides of the buildings get finished off. And some of that is with sort of a styrofoam material that needs to get cut. So I just wanted to bring this to the electeds and the board's attention and see if we can maybe put that on our agenda to look at, because I think it's very, very problematic. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for signing up tonight and for your comments. And Jeffrey, that concludes our public session.
Thanks, Jessica. All righty. Moving on, next item on the agenda. Any question? We're going to adopt the rest of the agenda. Any questions on the agenda as proposed? I'll take a motion to adopt, please. Great. Any objections?
Like to make second.
Thank you. Any objections? Great, the agenda is adopted. On to the minutes with thanks to our co-secretaries, Blake and Katie. Any questions on the minutes? Twee? Ooh, Twee, we can't hear you.
Can't hear you, Twee.
Oh, she goes away.
She's coming over to my house. Hold on.
Yeah, she's gonna meet me on Gansevoort Street. There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I tried to use a speaker. I don't know what it's called, like the remote speaker, and it made me not talk. But just as a person who takes notes all the time, I really appreciate how detailed these notes are. I just wanted to say that. So thank you. And,
Oh, she's happy.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So with no issues or objections of the minutes, I'll take a motion to adopt the minutes, please.
Motion to adopt minutes.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Great. Any objections? The minutes are adopted. I just got a message that our Manhattan Borough President will be a few minutes late to joining us this evening, but he is going to be Zooming in, which we're of course thankful for. So with that, I'm going to move forward to the rest of the reports from our elected officials. And I am looking to see if the Councilmember Gail Brewer is here or anybody from her team at the moment. I don't believe so, right, Jesse? Okay, and so with no—
I'm here.
Of course, sorry. Hi, Gail. Go right ahead.
All right, thank you. A few things to pick up on what was said about the garbage. So as Jeffrey indicated, the City Council has done a response to the mayor's budget. And in terms of the issue that there's very few things that the council can be 100% supportive of, but a cleaner New York is one of them. So we are adding, I'm just saying we hope to add $22 million to the corner basket pickup in terms of 48 million for just general sanitation funding restoration. And that includes 18.2 million to restore composting for rat mitigation, which I think actually goes to the Department of Health, but it's $5 million. And then a little over 3 million for school education on the same topic, for zero waste and climate things. And then, of course, more money for the Parks Department, $52 million in addition for the Parks Department for horticulture, staffing. I don't know that that adds up to what we all want, which is the 1% of the budget for parks, but the mayor said he was going to do that. So I assume at some point that'll work out. There are lots of things in this response. I'd love to see your letter when you vote on it afterwards. There's also money, again, additionally for, if you can imagine, homeless services. You can look at it and see what it is. But it's things like more money for SROs that deal with persons with AIDS, more money for drop-in centers, safe havens, and of course, what we really want, at least when I can speak for myself, is converting permanent hotels to permanent housing. I know that may not be everybody's wish, but I certainly feel strongly about it. And then also more money for runaway beds for young people, LGBTQ in particular. And there are other homeless aspects. I think the state is also coming up with some money, but it's not enough. But just so you know, that's at least on the agenda with many other aspects and pushing that agenda. Number two, in terms of seniors, I just want to once again thank Encore. I went with them over the weekend and delivered food, and I think many of you have done that. It's always one of the best senior programs. You know, they have, just as an example of how many challenges these senior programs have to deal with. They obviously have, many costs that are not covered by their contracts. They're now delivering 500,000 or eating, coming in or delivering 500,000 meals a year. They could do 1 million if they had more money. That's how much the need is just in Community Board 4, Community Board 7's area. And they also need money to renovate their single room occupancy. At the same time, they're building some new space for people to have more enlivened senior center. So it's a great program, and I know you support it, but I just want to emphasize how great it is. I want to also just mention other topics that I'm working on, this endless vacant store problem. So to the credit of Manhattan Chamber of Commerce, they just got a very large grant from the federal government, I think Carolyn Maloney in particular, to look at this issue of vacancies. It won't just be in Board 4 and Board 7, but it is because they are the Manhattan Chamber of Commerce. But I'm going to work with them. I hope you are. I know that we're going to work with other groups, something called Save Our Stores, and at least get the data for my district and even beyond to figure out what is it that is causing these immense numbers? We know about pandemic, but this was a problem before the pandemic. At the same time, we're going to try to improve the data that is collected by the Department of Finance. It's not collected real time, it's not collected particularly well. And so we have actually legislation to improve how it is collected so that we can understand it, you know, and not have to be data analysts in order to do so. Also, regarding, this is the endless story, it goes on and on, but that commercial rent tax, despite Dan Garodnick improving it in terms of the people who don't have to pay it, the supermarkets still have to pay it. And I think we can't afford to lose any more affordable supermarkets. So I would love to get rid of the commercial rent tax, which you probably know, only in Manhattan, goes from Chambers to 96th Street. And I'd love to get rid of it, particularly for the supermarkets, if not for even more storefronts. But just so you know, I'm also focused on that. I want to mention, I don't know if this is a problem everywhere. We're having a lot of problem with Amazon trucks. We got Fresh Direct trucks in the past. I got that. But for some reason, I don't know if it's because the Amazon trucks don't have, I don't know if they're Amazon, they look like rented trucks. I don't know if they're Amazon employees. Fresh Direct are Fresh Direct employees. So everywhere, I mean, just swamped with calls on this topic. So I'd love to work with you to see if there's a more cohesive way that Amazon has to approach the issue of unloading in every place imaginable. Also, I heard discussion about shoplifting. We're trying to get the exact statistics, but it's my impression from looking at the numbers at 311 and doing a data search. We'll have a better number soon that wards, you know, East Side, West Side, and the Village are hit the hardest in the whole city in terms of shoplifting. And I assume it's individuals who don't live in our area. That's my understanding from NYPD, but they just look at these areas as a place to shoplift. So, and it's really dramatic. It's like thousands more in terms of the numbers compared to those that are in other areas. I'm not going to talk about helicopters endlessly because we talk about it, we don't get very far. As you know, I went to New Jersey, took a tour, it was freezing cold. I wanted to see, where does this helicopter fly? So I was in one that doesn't have any doors or windows. It just gets strapped in and hope for the best. You go over downtown Manhattan, right up Central Park, up the Central Park itself. So I can understand why it's so horrific. I mean, I know because I live nearby. And you come back down toward the east side, going by East River Park, Brooklyn Bridge Park, lovely, right over them, and so close to Governor's Island that I don't know how anybody can hear anything. And of course, I get constant complaints from Governor's Island. And then we must have gone around the Statue of Liberty 3 times, and I have no interest in going around the Statue of Liberty 3 times. But there were tourists on the helicopter, and they just dying to see Statue of Liberty. So it's a problem. And this was a cold, freezing cold day. I can't tell you how cold it was. And so during the summer, there are many more pilots, many more so on. So now I know it's absolutely true. The number of complaints last year to 311, 21,000. And that compares with 8,000 the year before. So people are hearing them. It's a constant. You have the heliport, you're trying to move. Your heliport only does the tour, I would say transport, not tourism. Downtown does tourism, but they only go on the river. This New Jersey is just right across our borough. So we have, I know we're trying to move your heliport out of the riverside of the Hudson River Park. But we got a lot of helicopter issues to deal with. At the same time, Congressman Nadler, Congressman Maloney, they're trying so hard to get federal legislation. I don't know that it's going to pass. It would say no helicopter can fly over a city of 8 million or more. That's us. So I want to say we're going to try again with New Jersey. We haven't given up. I learned also they have a lot of jobs at this location. So I can hear New Jersey folks not being excited about getting rid of all those jobs. So it's an uphill battle. I also want to just mention in April, we're going to be doing a lot of what you're talking about, which is obviously it's Earth Day, but it's also, you know, having lots of forums on trees and painting the mailboxes and all those sorts of things that are important. for our wonderful planet. Just like everybody else, we have tons of test kits. We gave out about 1,000 the other day. If anybody needs test kits, let me know. I also wanted to thank all the NYCHA residents because I believe strongly, and I think Hudson Guild does this, but many do not. Most NYCHA community centers at NYCHA are not open on the weekends, not open in the evening. So it's a big push. I don't know if I'll be successful to try to get a citywide effort to have more community centers located at NYCHA available for quality programs, times that they're not open now. And I am meeting with one of the deputy mayors to talk about that because I made such a stink about it at a meeting recently. Anyway, that's it. We're doing a lot of PB work, but I don't know that it's specific to your area, but there are things like it on trees. And if you go to our website, you'll see it. And thank you very much. I hope you get our newsletter because it's really good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Gail, next time you take a chopper ride, let me know. I'll go with you, and then we'll skydive back onto the island because
that would be great. Because I had to go back to New Jersey. It was horrible.
Thank you, Gail, for being here. Let's see. I believe Borough President Levine is with us now.
Hello, Mr. Chair. Well, I'll tell you, when you and Gail go up for that ride, I'll be waving at you from the ground. There's
Perfect.
No way I'm getting up in one of those. On a serious note, I'm not sure if Gail's still on, but I am absolutely in lockstep with her in this fight and grateful for her continued work on this. I know how high of a priority it is for CB4 and many, many, many other neighborhoods in Manhattan and beyond. I'm really happy to have a chance to say a few words to you at a busy time for my office, for your community, for the city, as we're in the midst of what seems to be the beginning of another COVID wave. We're in the midst of budget season down at City Hall. We're in the midst of community board selection process and interviews. And we're continuing to fight for a better open meetings law. So very quickly, just to touch on those points, I'll start with the final one. We are pushing really, really hard to settle this open meetings law question so that we don't have to live month to month hoping that the emergency order will be extended. As you know, the current order is set to expire on April 15th. Last month, the night before expiration, we got an extension. Not acceptable to continue that way. We're pushing very hard for legislation that my friend Senator Hoylman has up in Albany that would once and for all give this board and all boards the flexibility to do hybrid as you see fit. We know you need resources for that, and we're fighting as well because it does take technology and staff to do hybrid well. It's not easy to do it right, and we're very sensitive to that. We want to support you in that as well. We've also prepared for the worst case scenario that the emergency law expires without any kind of fix. And so we did seek and obtain guidance from City's Law Department on what that will mean for this board if you have to operate under the old rules when COVID hasn't gone away. And I won't go into those details now, but we established guidance for how to deal with things like vaccine screening, mask requirements, the extent to which the public can participate virtually. There are real limitations. No one wants that to be the situation, but we want to be prepared in case that happens. Speaking of COVID, some of you have probably seen me talking about the fact that cases are rising again, and Manhattan has now surpassed the threshold that the CDC has established for what they call yellow code or medium level of risk. In fact, CB4 really entered that level of transmission even quicker than the borough as a whole. Unfortunately, Manhattan south of 96th Street has been leading the rise in cases citywide. There's not a single good explanation for why that is. In part, it is being led by young people really in the 25 to 34 cohort that are out socializing, and that's great, but we want to alert them that there's still risk out there. And so my office put out a plan a couple of weeks ago that we call Stay Healthy to Stay Open, which calls for the city to act now to blunt this wave, to limit the effects of future waves, not with draconian restrictions. Really, it's about resources and attention and messaging COVID boosters are our number one priority. We're way behind on this. Only 37% of the city has gotten their booster. I'm forgetting the number exactly for CB4, but it's certainly under half of the population, if I'm not mistaken. Long way to go in boosters in every neighborhood in the city. And we have a variety of measures that we're pushing to help pick that up. We're also pushing for every household to have an adequate supply of tests and high quality masks and other resources. There's been real disruption in the testing system. You've probably seen it in the community. There are fewer of the private pop-up providers, vans and tents, and those that remain, including CityMD and others, are now charging if you don't have insurance. This is terrible, and it really disrupts our testing. It's a critical moment. It's the fault of Republicans in Congress mainly. I won't get into it, but COVID funding has not been extended. It's important that if you go for a test now, ask if there will be a fee before they do the test. There are people getting hit with $50, $100 fees for the test. Ask first before they do the test. Secondly, remember, you can always get a free test, no matter your insurance status, at a city-run site. And there's now a wonderful program to distribute free home tests at every library in Manhattan, in the city, as well as a variety of cultural institutions. So you have other options as the private tests now in many cases start to impose fees. I mentioned that it's budget time for the city, also for the state. I mean, they're at the 11th and a half hour, but we are earlier at the city level. And I'm fighting on a number of fronts. I'll just mention one. I'm fighting for the parks budget of this city to be restored to 1% of the total budget. Why do I say restored? If you go back to the 60s and 70s, the parks budget was 1.5% of the total budget. Now it's down to about 0.5%. And that impacts everything you see in the park. The number of gardeners and maintenance workers and PEP officers. The ability to maintain our parks is obviously directly related to the budget. And so I've joined a really big citywide coalition of council members, advocates, labor leaders, pushing for 1% for parks. Among the other things it would enable is our initiative to plant 1 million more trees as part of our expansive vision for parks. I did mention that we have community board applications that are well underway. We're almost done the interviews. If you haven't interviewed yet and you're reapplying or applying new, if you're a member of the public, we have, I think, one more session on April 11th. I believe that Tricia Shimamura, my director of community affairs, is on this Zoom. And I'm not sure if you have the chat enabled here, but if you do, maybe she'll put her contact info there, or reach out to Eric Cuello on my team. We want you to interview. If you haven't yet, you got one more chance. Finally, I'll mention that I had a great meeting earlier in the week with Chair LeFrancois and a number of other leaders from the board on the Lirio proposal. I just have to say how much I admire this board's diligence and thoughtfulness on land use. Really, it's second to none. You've had to rise to the occasion again and again. And we had a really good discussion earlier in the week. I'm meeting with the developers tomorrow, and we'll certainly update you, Jeffrey, on that. I have a number of questions that you all gave me, directed us to seek clarity on, and we'll be issuing our opinion on the project in about a week. But we really are taking to heart the good work that you've done here on CB4, and are going to continue to dialogue with you down the home stretch on that. So I think I went a little over time. Thank you for that. I'm going to pause now. I don't know if there's room for questions, Jeffrey. If there's not, I understand. But either way, I'll pass it back to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate your time and those updates tonight. Chris, over to you for a brief question, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Borough President. Quick question. The previous mayoral administration had put on a contest, if you will, for COVID rapid tests that never came to fruition. I know there was one announcement for a prize at a Columbia University. The city has yet to procure or create or produce their own rapid test, with private sector now removing resources to develop rapid test available to the public. And with the US Congress now not covering in budget rapid test PCRs and potentially even booster shots, what are we doing to create a surplus of rapid tests during this next surge? Obviously, we're very happy to have the Union Public Library be a partner, but what are we doing to actually create a surplus in product?
Excellent question, Chris. It's really good. I'll just try and briefly say there are two issues. There's the supply of rapid tests, and then there's places that you can go to get a test, rapid or PCR. This is a good news, bad news situation. The supply is better than it's ever been. New York City has secured several million home tests. We have not had this good supply on the home tests for the entire 2 years. So the production and supply side is better. The problem is these testing sites that are so important. They're the only place you can go for a PCR. And also there's reasons why you would want to go there for an antigen as well. So your best option in the meantime is a city-run site, the brick and mortar sites, et cetera, or to go to a library cultural for the take-home test. In the meantime, we all need to be fighting like hell to get Congress to fix this. It's a $10 billion package. It went up to a vote last night. Almost all the Republicans in the Senate voted against it. It's really shameful. That's what we have to fix to solve the testing site problem that I just mentioned. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Mark. And a shout out to the Chelsea Clinic on 9th Avenue and 28th Street in our backyard as well. Tina, final question, please.
Yes, I just wanted to bring to your attention, I have a friend that went to City MD for a test, and the bill came back, not for this person to pay, but for Medicaid to pay. It was over $1,000.
For a test? Wow.
Yeah.
Could you give us, if you could tell us what provider that was?
Okay.
That sounds like it's some sort of extortion scheme.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it until I saw it in print. So should I email Eric about this?
Yes, please do. Please do. I think we're done, Mr. Chair. I do want to shout out Katie Savage. Been able to do a couple cleanups with her, and I think she's on right now. But
thank you for that.
She's pushing for big increase in sanitation budget, which I am 1,000% on board with. I know that CB4 has been active on sanitation, and just I want you to know we're fighting in the budget on this as well. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Mr. Borough President. Good to see you and appreciate the updates tonight.
You well, thanks.
Let's see. Next on our list, State Senator Brad Hoylman, who I believe is Natalie. The floor is yours.
Amazing. Hi, good evening, everyone. It's great to be with you all here. I first just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Natalie Nasulich. I'm the new Community Board 4 liaison with Senator Hoylman's office, and I come to this role after working with housing conservation coordinators for the past several years. So I'm really excited to continue to work in the community and to work with you all. And unfortunately, Senator Hoylman is not able to attend tonight, as folks have already mentioned, and I'm sure many of you know, the state budget is, negotiations are happening right now, and he actually just had to go into conference. So he's sad to miss it tonight, but I'm just going to be sharing a few updates on his behalf that we wanted to let folks know about. So in terms of a budget update, Senator Hoylman's working with his colleagues to finalize the $220 billion New York State budget. And we've been continuing to fight for increased funding to provide additional COVID-19 relief for tenants, landlords, and utility customers, fair pay for home care workers, new funding for mental health services, and much more. And we're also advancing legislation to allow a virtual option for community board, CEC, and other public meetings, which we've already referenced tonight. So we hope, and we will definitely be sharing more details as soon as we have them. And then just a quick update about Penn Station. So in early March, we sent a letter, our office sent a letter with Senator Krueger and many of our Senate colleagues to Empire State Development to halt the Penn Station redevelopment plan until explanations are provided to the public about the cost, design, scope, bond liabilities, and other currently unknown aspects of the project. And we also called on ESD to hold off from voting on the plan until the New York City Independent Budget Office releases its independent financial analysis of the project. And we actually recently received a response from ESD. It's linked in our board report, and I'm also happy to share the link with members of the board if you need that. And then just, yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I thought you were done.
Oh,
go ahead.
Okay. Just a last quick legislative update. So in addition to the budget, yesterday the Senate passed our bill S6172A, which creates strong and clear laws against tampering, disabling, removing, or interfering with emission control devices and emission tampering devices on vehicles. And these devices are essential to limiting the emission of air pollutants, protecting public health, and maintaining the state's ability to meet the greenhouse gas reduction targets set forth in the Climate Change and Community Leadership Act. So just wanted to share that. Thank you for having me tonight, and yeah, happy to try to answer any questions.
Thanks, Natalie. Quick question from Christine.
Yes, Natalie, thank you so much for Senator Hoylman's letter on idling and on making sure that we continue to have a protocol which is very tight. And that was very helpful. And I think I believe it did slow down the decision and turn the wave at DEP. I wanted to share a concern. I just saw an announcement that the discussions at the state level were advancing on, takeaway drinks. I don't remember what it's called, takeaway drinks. And I just want to say that we've been really concerned about that because we still don't know the design of the open restaurants. And we are very concerned that such a protocol will essentially allow people to just drink on the sidewalk in front or next to the restaurants, which is what was our experience during the COVID. And so we just would like that Brad is very, very cautious about where once the drink is taken away, is going home, that it is really drunk at home and not within 5 feet of the restaurants on the sidewalk.
Thanks, Christine. Okay, is anybody here from State Senator Liz Krueger's office? Alrighty, so I see Erica Overton from Assemblymember Linda Rosenthal's office. Erica, nice to see you.
Hi, Erica Overton, Assemblymember Linda Rosenthal's office. I know you've missed me. My colleague Alex Levin is no longer with the office, so you have me back. So just to give a brief update, obviously, yes, the Assemblymember is in Albany. We anxiously await her return whenever that will be. So she can't be with us tonight, but a few updates. First, we have mentioned before about the West 42nd and 11th intersection redesign. We did a walkthrough with DOT and the lovely Christine Berthet, and we talked about different ways to improve that intersection. DOT agreed to it, and they sent a letter just before saying that they are going to make all the changes that we requested at that intersection. So yeah, Christine. So we didn't have to wait 3 years, or 4 years, like West 57th and 8th. So they are going to redesign it, and so I'm awaiting the timeline on that. Second, they touched on it very briefly. The Assembly member wrote a letter to Mayor Adams about DEP and the city's proposed idling laws, idling regulations. There is going to be a DEP anti-idling task force that's going to be in mid-April. So we're hopefully we'll get you and CV7, everyone on that. And then third, the Assembly member spearheaded a letter with Senator Hoylman about the MTA site. And so we're hoping the MTA has given us quite a pushback on this about meeting with them, having CB4 meet with them so that they could hopefully remove their space at this site so they can create more affordable housing on the second floor. The riff is that HPD wants to be part of that meeting, as does MTA. They want them to be part of it. And so we're getting a solo meeting. So we will see if that is possible. And so they are reviewing the letter right now. So Everyone cross your fingers. And then fourth, Village Care at 46th and 10th. We had DSNY go out earlier or last week. There was garbage all over the side of their street. It seems like that was where DSNY was telling people, other businesses and residences, to place their garbage. And so we got complaints about that from them and from nearby residents. And so they went out, and now there has been a new solution. So hopefully you won't see stacks of garbage at that area. And just a very brief update on our DSNY walkthrough. We are probably the slowest walkers in history. And so we didn't get everywhere we wanted to go. You have to walk very fast to hit all those locations. So we are scheduling a DSNY follow-up in the next couple of weeks with the assembly member once she's back from Albany, and DSNY to hit more of those Hell's Kitchen spaces. And so we will invite you to come along with us once we do that. But that is my update.
Erica, thank you. You know, we talk a lot of trash here, so we appreciate your attention to those sanitation issues.
Yes.
And thank you for the update tonight.
No problem.
All righty. Is anybody here from Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney's office? I don't see the Congress member herself tonight, but I don't know if there's a staffer.
I'm here.
Hi, sorry, Betsy, I didn't see you before. Sorry about that. Welcome.
No problem. Okay, so Congresswoman Maloney was thrilled to be in attendance today as President Biden signed into law her bill, the Postal Service Reform Act. This historic act will give the USPS sound financial footing after years of losses. It provides key oversight tools to enhance transparency and ensures 6-day-a-week delivery for all Americans, and will help hopefully keep the Postal Service financially viable for years to come. The Congresswoman also today, in conjunction with Congressman Nadler, you all know they're both the co-authors of the James Zadroga 9/11 Health and Compensation Act and the Never Forget Heroes Act, issued a statement regarding Ms. Rupa Bhattacharya's step down as special master of the VCF, and asked Attorney General Garland to appoint a new special master as quickly as possible to help keep those applications going through the process. Last month, Congresswoman Maloney was excited to announce the inclusion of $6.3 million for New York 12 community projects in the fiscal year 2022 appropriations. As Councilmember Brewer mentioned, the Manhattan Storefront Revitalization and Small Business Entrepreneurship Project was one of those that received funding, as well as, I believe, in CB4, New Alternatives for Children, so that they can purchase equipment for telehealth care for both health and mental health for services, and the AIDS Service Center of Lower Manhattan, and the Alliance for Positive Change in New York for a workforce development initiative. On that too, if you have a agency that might want to apply for a fiscal year 2023 appropriation, community project, as they're called, reach out to our office and we will get you the paperwork for that. In early March, the Congresswoman voted to pass a bipartisan resolution demanding an immediate ceasefire and the full withdrawal of Russian forces from Ukraine, and expressed her unequivocal support for Ukraine's sovereignty. She's voted yes for all of the funding, $14 billion in humanitarian aid and military aid to Ukraine, and has also urged swift action against Russian oligarchs who use anonymous shell companies and limited liability companies to hide their assets. And I think finally, we are thrilled to be taking part again in the Congressional Art Competition. The competition gives high school artists a chance to have a piece of their art hang in the Capitol for a year. The deadline to submit online applications is May 5th. And to compete in the art competition, a student just needs to either live in or attend school in the 12th Congressional District. And if I can, I will put the link in the chat for that. So if you have any young artists in your life, let them know. It's very easy. You do it online. They even put the picture online. Just upload a picture, and then, we will be having more about that. We also have a lot of tests. If people are in need of COVID tests, reach out to our office. We also have plenty of tests. So yeah, I think that's everything, unless you have questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Betsy. Really appreciate it. And we don't have the chat function open, but do send us the link on the child art competition so we can push that out on our Twitter or social media or something. That's awesome.
Will do.
Thanks for that. Okay, from District Attorney Bragg's office, I believe I saw somewhere on the square. Eric, you're here, right? Yeah,
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, right here. Hey, how's it going? Thank you, Jeffrey.
Sure.
So really briefly, I wanted to start with an introduction because I am new here. So great to see everyone. I'm looking forward to working with everyone going forward. So I'm the new community engagement coordinator for the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. I'm covering Mid-Manhattan and also the Community Board 4 area. So I just have a few announcements to make. And if anyone has any questions or would like to reach out to me personally, I can provide my contact information as well. I don't know if there's a chat function for this Zoom call, but again, if you just ultimately call the Manhattan DA's office and ask for Eric Straza in the Community Partnerships Unit, you will be connected with me. So first off, really quickly, just wanted to announce information on our Manhattan Small Business Alliance that we recently started. So what this does, this was created to work with small businesses to address things like shoplifting and commercial robberies. Let's see what else. What this does is it effectively works as a dialogue between us and small businesses to identify people like repeat offenders and also come up with certain policies and initiatives to help curb some of those issues. Another thing that this will do is it creates focus groups for area specific regions. So something that might be relevant here is we recently launched a Mid-Manhattan focus group to work with small businesses there. Next thing I wanted to announce, so there's also the Pathways to Public Safety Division that our office started. And the reason that this was created was to address things like mental health and drug use or addiction issues, working with social services and specialized court parts, things like those, to address those issues early on so they don't have a chance to develop and potentially turn violent in the future. This emphasizes things like reentry, diversion, alternatives to incarceration, things like that. And then on top of those two announcements, I actually have two events, so to speak, to announce. First one being the New York Crime Victims Vigil. Now this will take place on Sunday, April 24th from 2 to 4 p.m. at the West End Collegiate Church, located on 245 West 77th Street at West End Ave. We encourage everyone who would like to come to attend. If you need any more information on that, you can reach out to me as well. And then finally, we have our Gun Violence Prevention Fellowship. The deadline for this has actually been extended to April 22nd. At 5 p.m. And what we're looking for is 2 to 3 young individuals, whether they are college students, high school or GED graduates that are set to graduate in June of 2022. And we're looking for these individuals to have been personally affected by gun violence, whether that is directly with their families or in their communities. And so what they'll be doing, if I can say a little bit about that, is they will be working with DA Bragg and other units and bureaus in the office to draft policy proposals and initiatives, working with the office to create those and then potentially see some of those enacted by the end of the program. So again, if anyone has any questions or would like to speak about anything like that or speak to me personally, I don't know, Jeffrey, if now would be a good time to give contact information, or again, if they just want to reach out to the office, they can be put in touch with me as well.
Yeah, I think the best thing, so we don't enable the chat function.
Sure.
But I think folks can quickly, as long as they can call the DA's office and be plugged into you, we can make sure that happens. I also know we've updated your contact information on what we share with folks. So we've got that and we can share that along.
Great. All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here tonight. Appreciate it.
Pleasure. Yeah, pleasure to see everyone. And again, looking forward to working with you guys. Thanks again.
Likewise. Thank you. All righty. And finally, do we have anybody from the Public Advocate's Office this evening?
I don't believe so. I looked.
Okay.
For names that we know, but I didn't see anybody.
Well, since you're speaking, Mr. Bodine, it's your turn on the microphone for the district manager's report.
All right. Good evening, everybody. I'm Jesse Bodine, the district manager for Community Board 4. My district manager report will be very short. As mentioned a couple times or referenced a couple times earlier, the in-person meeting and open meetings law issue is it has been renewed. The emergency declaration has been renewed, so we will be meeting virtually up until the 15th of the month. We are suspecting that it will not be renewed after that, and we would be required to go into in-person meetings. And so there's a memo that you guys will be looking, reviewing, discussing, and hopefully approving as a temporary policy of what we'll be doing when that gets pulled back and we have to meet in person. So that's that. And then the only other thing is I wanted to say, with the exception of the Chelsea Land Use Committee, all of the other committees meeting in April are meeting on their regular times and scheduled times. We will be working with the co-chairs and the committee to find a new date for that committee just for this month. And I think that's it, unless there's any questions.
Great. Thanks, Jesse.
No problem.
Going into the chair's report on board business, began to announce this last month and met with the co-chairs of the Social and Racial Justice Task Force. That schedule is changing. That committee will, that task force working group will no longer be meeting on a monthly basis. They are pivoting their model, if you will, and taking on a quarterly approach to target specific issues that the committee feels is relevant to take on and specifically address, and then perhaps bring it to some sort of forum or more public setting outside of just a standard monthly committee meeting. So please stay tuned for more specific and detailed updates as it relates to that task force and working group. Other updates on small meetings and ongoing working groups. You heard the borough president mention that myself, along with Joe Restuccia from the Housing Committee, JD Noland, and Paul Devlin from Hell's Kitchen Land Use, we met with the borough president, his land use team, and Jesse, of course, regarding the MTA site at 54th Street and 9th Avenue, which is a ULURP application that is formally underway. You'll recall we transmitted our opinion on that about a month or so ago now. And so that's wending its way through the ULURP process. From the borough president, he'll issue his decision on to city planning, city council, and then the mayor's desk. So you'll continue to hear us provide updates accordingly as we negotiate every step of the way on that project. Other working group updates, the Port Authority Bus Terminal Replacement Working Group continues to meet as necessary. We had a meeting with city planning, and we're sort of on hold with our regular cadence with the Port Authority as they take time to respond to all the information we've presented to them, very specific and targeted questions. And so we'll continue to update and engage as necessary on that. Penn Station, it's been announced the CAC will be meeting on April 28th for an update on the project. So stay tuned to our May meeting for that. Numerous members from the board sit on that advisory council, so we'll be well represented there. So the Sanitation Planning Working Group continues its regular meeting. They've met with DSNY and they're reviewing responses from the Department of Buildings. And, you know, as I mentioned, we talk a lot of trash. So it's great that we have a working group dedicated to a topic that many of us deal with on a daily basis. Other small meetings and board activities. Clinton Hell's Kitchen Land Use is continuing to meet with owners of the 343 West 47th Street. We also, regarding illegal demolition, we also were invited to attend, and thank you to Paul Devlin for doing so, the press conference that Councilmember Batra organized regarding illegal demo by neglect, excuse me, in the special Clinton district. Tenants being forced to live in horrid conditions by their landlords, which is, you know, is illegal based on the special Clinton district. The Land Use Committee also met with DOB and HPD and Councilmember Batra's office on that specific site as well, 410, 412 West 46th Street. CB4 continues to attend the future Penn Station Social Service Planning Group that is organized by ESD, the state entity that has taken an interest in Penn Station. That is a separate group from the Penn Station Area Advisory Committee as well. CB4 also met with DDC and DEP regarding the water main project, MED 669 on 7th Avenue from West 14th Street to 34th Street. So another significant DDC DEP project underway that's going to be taking place in the district. And finally, MCB4 via myself and Christine Berthet provided testimony at the Hudson River Park Trust public hearing for the Chelsea Piers lease extension. We have a letter on that topic tonight coming out of transportation as well. You heard me speak about the Transportation Committee survey that is now out to the public. Please do take that and share it with your friends and neighbors accordingly. We collect the zip codes, so folks outside of CB4 are welcome to provide input as well. The more color we get, the fuller the picture can be. That is it for me on my report of the board actions over the previous month. So I'm excited to now pivot into the business section of the meeting and move us forward in that. We'll start with Clinton Hell's Kitchen land use, and I will pass it over to JD and Paul, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have one letter before the board today. It's about 452 West 36th Street again. This may be a case of demolition by neglect. The owner did two wrong things. He let the building go down, and he has a building that's right behind Joe Vespucci's apartment. So when Joe looked out his back window, he saw the building was empty, and that's why this letter is out there. It's a basic letter. We've written many of these letters before. We're just asking HPD to evaluate and repair the building to try to save the rent stabilized apartment. As Jeffrey said, Paul also addressed a press conference about another neglected building, 410, 412 West 46th Street. Paul, that same sort of issue, had a letter about that before. Paul, do you want to say anything about that?
No, thanks. Jeffrey pretty much hit on it. The only thing I would add is the trend of what is happening in Hell's Kitchen. This is the 19th building that demolition by neglect has occurred. So it's really a critical issue that we keep our eye on. Thank you.
Thanks, JD. Thank you, Paul. Any questions for Hell's Kitchen land use? Mr. Lazarin.
Yeah, JD, in the letter, you mentioned that getting together with the landlord and speaking with the landlord. Is that real? Has that happened? Will it happen?
It's something we try to do. We're meeting with the owners of a building that was partially demolished on 47th Street. We have been meeting with them because when they restore the building, we want to make sure they do it according to the zoning. So we do reach out to the owners as well. Yes.
But on this 36th Street particularly, is there any reception?
I can answer that, JD, if that's all right. We're working on it. It's not as easy. They don't, all these buildings are all LLCs that don't have people's names attached to them.
Right.
It takes some time to really try to dig in and find if there's someone willing to be talking to us about it.
Gotcha. Thanks, Jesse.
No problem.
Jesse, your hand was up next. Did you have something on this letter?
Well, I just, I want to just recognize and maybe, that there'll probably be some additional information added to this letter because we are in conversations with the agencies currently about this. This building has been sealed by the agencies. And so I just want to be clear that, the final version of this letter will probably have some more depth and background information and probably some new information as well. So I can't make an amendment, but I just wanted to highlight that for everybody's understanding of what the final letter will look like.
Thank you. Ms. Pham?
Thank you. That actually raises a question for me. I'm not sure how to vote on it if there's going to be extra stuff that we don't see. I only had some minor comments, but I guess I would like to ask that first. Do you understand the question?
Yeah, it is hard to hear you, but I mean, I guess I think what the stuff that would be added to the letter would be within the keeping of the way we approach these topics. So information we learn based on any conversation with the landlord that we are able to glean, but more importantly, the discussion we're having with the agencies, and if there's going to be any course of action taken by DOB or HPD accordingly. Jesse, is that?
Yeah, I don't see this thrust of the letter being changing.
different.
So it's, yeah, we're writing to the agencies and we're requesting, as Paul mentioned, to utilize a specific program and for a specific agency to take the lead. That's not going to change. I think in just, further information about whether we've actually have the landlord, the owner of the building, communicating with us, or if there's maybe a deeper history to this particular building that, we are currently maybe unaware of in terms of just background information. So that, but I don't think anything of the thrust of the letter of what the recommendation of the committee was would be changing.
Okay, I remember what it's called. It's called the Bluetooth speaker. That's what the technical difficulties that I was having, so I turned it off. To my original comments, I wasn't sure if you wanted to make MCB4 a plural subject or if it's a singular subject, because in one place you say MCB4 is very concerned on line 26, but then on line 32 you say however MCB4 believe that. So I just want to make sure we're consistent in what the subject is. And then
thank you for catching that. We'll correct it.
Okay, and then just stylistically, you just end with the background, and it just feels as though like the ask or should be the conclusory part of the sentence, or your before you end with the signature box.
It's the form we've been taking with these demo letters. We can take a look at it for you to see if it works better the way you suggest.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Barnett.
Thank you. Paul just mentioned a stat that I found to be pretty striking. And I wanted to, one, get some clarity, and two, maybe raise that it might be appropriate to add to the background section of this letter. Paul, could you explain the this is the 19th demolition that's occurred, what the time frame is, and if this is for the whole special Clinton district or only a subsection of that?
Roberta, I don't have the statistics off the top of my head handy right now, but there has been a trend. It has been in the special Clinton district. I think if Joe's on, I don't see Joe today. If Joe's around, Joe has much more. Here. Yeah, Joe would have that off the top of his head. But I apologize that I don't have it off the top of my head.
Roberta, we can provide. We certainly can provide the list of letters, so that will give you and some of the more recent letters have all of the other past buildings, so that we can get you that information quickly.
Thanks, Jesse.
No problem.
Mr. Greenwald.
Yeah, not directly on the letter, but I heard mentioned, the continued issues with identifying the true owners behind LLCs, who own these properties. And I know a couple of bills have been passed in the state and a couple of years ago, and my understanding is there are still issues, and clearly, that is still the case. And I'm just curious if this board has talked about this recently, or if any of the committees are talking about it in terms of writing a new letter to make sure that the laws that are on the books are actually being enforced. I think there's something with the tax department. The state tax department is holding up information and not actually turning it over. But I just don't know if this has been talked about in the last year or so, because it's still an issue, and and now, especially again with the oligarchs keeping their assets here. I know Brad Hoylman is maybe working on that, but is this something that the board has talked about recently? And if not, maybe we should add it onto an agenda.
Happy to have a land use or housing discussion about that accordingly. Jesse, anything to?
No, I mean, we haven't specifically dug into that as a topic. I mean, that's certainly something I think you could do. We could certainly invite, an elected official's office who's, been focused on that, or the agency that we think is the most appropriate to kind of be able to do that and sort of find out more information about that. That's for sure can be raised and maybe in one of the land use committees or something.
I think it'll be great. I mean, it also goes to the vacant storefront issue too. I mean, when people don't feel the immediate pressure to, rent out their properties because they're like three LLCs removed from the public pressure. So it's definitely something I think we should take up, and I'm happy to follow up with you on that.
Thank you, Jesse. Both Jessies. Okay, Chelsea Land Use, to Carrie and Jessica, but the nature of the letter and how the votes went, I'm going to pass it to Paul to present on item 2.
Terrific. I stepped down as co-chair of Chelsea Land Use in the first meeting. We have a split vote, and the 2 new co-chairs are not on the prevailing side of the vote, and so I get to present for Chelsea Land Use today. There's a letter on a renovations to private homes on West 20th Street, 417, 18, 19, 20, 21. You'll see it in the letter. It's a application for a certificate of appropriateness through the Landmarks Preservation Commission. For those of you who don't know what that means, a certificate of appropriateness is something that the commission, the Landmarks Preservation Commission, sort of assesses the effects of any work on a building's appearance and character to determine whether or not it's appropriate to do. What they look at is the building's architectural, historical, and cultural significance, and it's the style and proportions, materials, textures, and colors of the proposed changes. In a historic district of which this sits, the commission also considers the effect of the proposed work on neighboring buildings and the character of the district. This proposal was brought forward by a preservation architect who is representing 3 private homeowners. The 3 homes were at one point the faculty housing for the Theological Seminary, which fills the block of 20th Street between 9th and 10th. These 3 faculty buildings were converted to private residences in 2011. The remaining portion of the northern side of the block is basically the walls and fence surrounding the seminary's grounds. On the south side of the street, directly across from this, is Cushman Row houses, which many of you have heard of. Those houses all have fences and gates across the fronts of them. These 3 homeowners have had some conflicts with homeless population, waking up in the morning to find people sleeping on their private stoops. And so they're requesting gates be installed, and all 3 buildings would each have the same design as the existing fence line, the same curvature, the same finials, all the details. The architect has put great detail and attention into making sure that they align with the rest of the properties. Because it's 3 private homes, it's 3 separate and distinct applications. But the one architect is working with all 3 together to make a unified presence across that block. This is the issue you heard at the public session. There were a couple of people who spoke about the gates on West 20th Street. That's what this is in reference to. So the letter came through. We had a lengthy discussion about the impact of this on the neighborhood and the character of the historic district, on the character of the buildings, on the rights of the private residences, the rights of homeowners to protect their private property. It was quite a lengthy discussion, and the vote was split. So the prevailing vote is to recommend the approval of the certificate of appropriateness at the Landmarks Preservation Commission for these 3 gates.
Thank you, Paul. And just 2 things before we get into, I'm going to go to Jessica and Carrie next. It was 6 to 7, I believe, on the vote, right?
8 to 7.
8 to 7. Okay, sorry, 8 to 7. Okay, Jessica, Carrie, do you want to add anything or share where you guys?
Carrie, yep. Carrie, thank you.
So really simply, it was, as you've heard, it was a very close vote. I oppose this application because the changes proposed are not in character with the building's architectural, historical, and cultural significance, and therefore are not appropriate. You've heard some members of the community tonight speak in opposition. We also had some members during our meeting speak in opposition. Gates would be incongruous to these buildings. These are very famous, locally known residences that, as have been mentioned, used to be part of the seminary. And everything about the way these buildings sit and sit on the street match another set of buildings on the other end of the street. They all curve out as if they were really meant to be sort of come into my door. So the gates that are there now, you know, the stoops widen out to the street. When these buildings were built, there were no gates. And it's a bit tricky to think about them in relation to the rest of the block, because the block is mostly gated, but that is because Cushman Row is one of the few, landmark blocks that has gardens in front of their buildings. So they're recessed, and those gardens are gated. And that's how they were designed 100 years ago, or however many years ago. These were not designed that way. So they're not original to the building. And even though there may be other gates on the street, they are not the same. And also, the reasons that the application to install the gates came before us in the first place was for homeless loitering / trespassing. And it's difficult to see how gates will solve this problem. There's been discussions, as Paul mentioned, about, homeowners' rights to do what they wish with their property, but that doesn't really apply to these landmark buildings on a historic block. And gating an entranceway on these landmark buildings feel like they would not solve the problem. There was a long discussion about, well, the gates can be open all the time. And it's like, well, if they can be open all the time, then why are we even discussing this? It's not the first time we've seen a rise in homelessness, and this just does not seem to be a positive solution. So that's why I'm opposed. I'll turn it over to Jessica. Thank you.
Got it. Jessica, anything to add?
No, Carrie covered, you just spoke beautifully, Carrie, and very comprehensively. I would just also add that as I lived on that block for 12 years directly across from the property, and I'm very sympathetic to some of the changes that we all experience as it relates to increased trash and maybe a homelessness problem, but I never experienced the issue that was referenced when I lived there for 12 years. I did move 6 months ago, but for the 12 years I was there. And when we asked specifically for any evidence, maybe citing 311 calls or anything else that could help really provide greater substantiation to this as an ongoing issue, the same example that was offered initially was cited and no further evidence was given. So again, we're concerned about the appropriateness, but also the rationale here just doesn't feel like it holds water. And for that reason, we did not feel comfortable to vote for it.
And if I can just add one more quick thing that I forgot to mention, we did also ask about other, ways to mitigate this issue for the homeowners, like lights or sound or anything. And this was the only option that they put forward.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Loco, we'll go to you.
I'd like to point out that Pamela Wolf, the former co-chair of the CB4 Landmarks Committee, also voted against this in committee, as did Viren Brambad and I, the two architects on the committee. And, these row house gates seem like a minor thing, but they couldn't be at a more sensitive location. The seminary block, which Chelsea's founder, Clement Clark Moore, planned as the centerpiece of his community. The draft letter says the proposed gates are consistent with those of the 1840s row houses across the street, but those houses were built half a century earlier in the entirely different Greek Revival style. Their gates were conceived from the start as an extension of their garden fences, and they're what's called vernacular architecture. It's from an era when buildings were designed based on slowly evolving tradition.
David, I don't mean to cut you up, but I don't want to relitigate the letter. I know the vote was tight. I believe you were going to propose a potential rewrite, given what we heard from the public this evening. Is there a modification or an amendment? Or
yeah, I'd like to get to that, but I'd also like to describe a little bit more why I think, for the benefit of the full board, we might want to rewrite the letter. The consistency with the houses across the street as cited in the letter, I don't think that's appropriate, as I was explaining. And the more important consistency should be with the rest of the seminary. And even though the grounds are completely fenced, not a single building around the entire block of the seminary has gates in front of its doors. It would break that original pattern and particularly cause these three entrances to lose their harmony with two very similar entrances farther west. it's clear that the original architect never envisioned gates. The only place you can put them is at the top of the steps, where I can't remember ever seeing gates to an entrance on any building anywhere. And I've been a long-time resident just a block away. I go past the seminary all the time, and I don't see a homeless problem there. In the lead up to our discussion in the committee, I talked to people on the street. I spoke to a woman who owns a row house who said, yeah, she'd found a stranger sleeping in her vestibule in the 1970s, and she didn't really see any uptick in crime or homelessness. I got the same response from a building super very near the building. I just don't see it there. And I think approving this kind of change to this kind of building would set a dangerously low bar for what warrants harmful change to a top tier landmark. These entrances have stood intact for more than 130 years. They survived the city's most notoriously crime-ridden decades without gates. It would be a real shame if their grace and authenticity succumbed to a brush with the homeless. The homeless will move on, but these houses are forever going to belong to highly privileged owners, non-original gates and all. And I'd like to propose an amendment to the letter calling for disapproval of the proposal.
Okay, so that's not an amendment, it's a new letter. And so I'm gonna go to Christine next. There's on a process point. If you're making a motion on that, I will entertain a second, but we're not gonna take a vote on it now. We will take a vote on this on the whole when we do the voting at the end of the meeting, because this will need a roll call no matter what, given the nature of how this went in committee. And I wanna make sure that if your motion passes, that's a rewrite of the letter. And so we would need to vote on that separately as well. Does that make sense to you, David, and everybody else? Okay, so if there's a second on David's motion to amend the letter, Fearon, we'll take that as a second. Thank you. So right now, there is the letter as was presented to the board, which is to generally approve what's been put forth by the architect and building owners. I'm going to continue discussion, Christine and then Paul, but noting that at the end of the meeting, when we take our vote, we'll first vote on David's motion to basically have a new letter, which would oppose the request to install these gates instead. We'll do an up or down roll call vote on that motion. If that motion fails, we will then vote on the letter as presented to the board. So with that, Christine.
Yeah, I want to parallel this issue with what has happened in the last 10 years or 20 years with the bollard around buildings, which are absolutely prevalent now on every new building. Like, any building on Hudson Yard has a whole slew of bollard and taking a public space, and it's a defensive measure. And it's really not appropriate to resolve the problems which are posed. And now this is proliferating to any new building. This is a new fancy thing. It's like, we have bollard, we are important people. And I think I perceive this attitude of putting a gate in front of buildings in the same vein of having, rich people defending their property. And we have that more and more, and I don't think we should go down that path as a general concept without discussing the merits of the landmark. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Paul?
Yeah, I just want to add a couple of my personal thoughts on this in reaction to some of the earlier comments. One is that it was this building was really designed as a much more public building in the sense that it was the part of the seminary, and it was faculty housing, and it was multiple kind of people going in and out. It was part of a separate kind of grounds. Since its 2011 purchase by 3 private homeowners, the grounds have been separated out by a rear yard fence. These are no longer sort of public buildings, but they are rather much more private buildings. We also, when we discussed the notion of having alternative solutions put forward, I personally think that adding bright lights or cameras, security cameras, would have a greater negative impact on the historic facade of these buildings, rather than adding fences and gates that mimic the previous style of the fences that were built when the building was built. And the third thing I would note is that in looking at the properties, there are security grates on the first floor windows. I can't imagine those were built when the building was built, but were rather added at previous times of turmoil in the city. And those additions seem much more permanent than what this is offering as a solution. This is a reversible solution to the problem. I don't believe they would ever take the gates down, but I mean, at least it's not a permanent change to the facade of these historic buildings. And so those arguments to me were not persuasive enough to convince me that these gates were inappropriate.
Thanks, Paul. Twee, you're gonna have the last comment on this letter.
It wasn't really a comment. It was respectfully to ask Christine, what is a bollard? I don't know what that is.
Bollards. So bollards, right? The metal piece or cement piece that comes out of the sidewalk. If you think about, right, like, and usually there's a 4-foot gap between each one, NYPD, or, you know, it's a counter-terror measure, quote unquote. So, yes.
Thank you.
Sure. All right, Betty, final word.
You're on mute, Betty.
I know. I'm
Oh, sorry.
just doing it.
Sorry.
I wanted to also point out some other features which I voted for approval of this proposal because there is nothing being placed in the sidewalk. So it's not like bollards are in the sidewalk, okay? And the design of the gates is exactly like the fence that's in front of these 3 residences. And personally, I have gone through the kind of situation where people are trespassing or sleeping or something on a stoop. And I'm sympathetic to the homeowners. And as Paul mentioned, in the back of these houses, there is a fence which separates them from the common area of the seminary. So I felt positive about this proposal. That's it.
Thanks, Betty. Okay. Thank you to the new co-chairs of Chelsea Land Use. So again, just on process, we will entertain David's motion first as a roll call vote when we do the voting. If that fails, we'll then take up the letter and vote on that accordingly. BLP, Bert.
Hi, everyone. We have before you 11 motions. I would like to say that of the 11, 10 are how I would describe them, our usual. Denial unless certain stipulations are met. And those stipulations are terms of hours of operation, terms of noise / music, live, amplified, whatever. The 11th, which is item number 13, is unusual for us because it is a complete denial. I want to bring that to people's attention. It's not a denial with stipulations. And of course, by the way, you're aware that in the denial with stipulations, unless the stipulations are met, the applicants all sign off on those stipulations, which means they agreed to them. This applicant on item number 13, we suggested this, they suggested no. We suggested that, they said no. It's denial. And I want to say this kind of a letter, complete denial, and this is very thorough. It's not like 2 paragraphs. It's a couple of pages. It's a very difficult letter to write. And I want to give a, what was the word you used, I think, Jeffrey, before? Shout out. I want to commend. I'll be more clear. I want to commend. I want to thank Tina Nelson for writing this letter because it is a wonderful, excellent, articulate, thorough, thoughtful letter. Having said that, I'd like to bundle all the items.
We love a good bundle. Thank you, Bert. Any questions on the BLP items? Hector? You're on mute. It's okay.
Item number 4, which is 431 West 16th Street. That is actually in the a very saturated community that already has a number of clubs. And as the TA President Miguel Acevedo mentioned, it's already saturated with a lot of traffic and cars and issues. There was a club prior to this called the Highline Borough, which was closed, I believe, at the end of last year, if I remember correctly. And now a new supposed concession company is basically going to open this up as a hall venue for shows. Now the history is, and the way I'm reading is that it's also probably going to be a club as well, because there's nothing in here that says they can't be a club. And basically there are NYCHA houses and there are actually apartment buildings surrounding the area. Just because it's above the Western Beach supermarket does not mean that it does not affect the community here. We also have Chelsea Market across the street. We have the traffic on 9th Avenue, and this is very close to 9th Avenue as well, exasperating the ongoing issues of criminal activity, drugs in the neighborhood, which I'm not saying this club will bring, but history has shown that that there's a sharp increase when you have that kind of facility in a community. It's already saturated with similar sort of venues as well. So honestly, I'm very adamant against this even going through, and I'm kind of surprised that this is with stipulations as well. And also the hours of operation is questionable, because in one area it says till 11 till 12 a.m. But in some other areas, I also read that it says till 4 a.m. So there's little inconsistencies in the application as well. So I really would wish we could send this back and take a closer look at this and have a closer examination of this business before I'm proceeding with this letter.
Thanks, Hector. Marty, sorry.
Doesn't Hector need a response?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to think through. Bert, is there anything, I mean, timeline-wise, in terms of the engagement, what was the process there?
If there's inconsistency, I will take a look at the letter again and make it consistent. I don't remember any inconsistency, and maybe someone can refresh my memory. Is there more than one floor? Because we had a number of operations that came before us that had more than one floor, and one floor had one hours of operation, and another floor had others. I'm not sure if this was the one.
You want me to add to that, Bert?
Go ahead, Christine. Yes, please.
Yeah. So a few things. So it's definitely a 4 o'clock, and I think they are saying here that they generally would close at 11, but it's a 4 o'clock. You know, the reason why it's there, and I don't think we're opposing that, is that we know that the SLA told us that once a space had been, you know, licensed, I mean, they would not deny. And so this is, we are living with this reality of the SLA, which we know is not going to listen to us on that. So we rather discuss steps, and we've spent a fair amount of time talking to them about leaving enough space on the sidewalk for pedestrian to walk through, so we don't have the same issue as Maritime. And but we know that if we go and deny it, the SLA is going to approve it. So we just need to go through that carefully.
Thanks, Christine.
I appreciate that. I'm sorry, go ahead, Hector.
No. I mean, my concern is also that this is another club that's going to be opened up in the neighborhood. And honestly, they're going to pull in more hours because it's very broad, this application that they're putting toward. So, I mean, honestly, my concern is that this is going to get a little out of hand to the point where there'll be a lot of complaints, and noise complaints especially, because I don't think there's anything addressing noise complaints or soundproofing or anything in this application from what I'm reading here, only just food and, I mean, I see a
But
menu.
Hector, I don't think we're aware that there were ever noise complaints against the High Line in the past.
Right. Well, that's because
Nobody showed up at the meeting and
Right,
said, look,
right.
we have had noise complaints and we want you to address it as this application. So if there were a lot of noise complaints before, I would agree with you that we need to address it 100%. But we were, when this came in front of the committee, no one was aware and no one showed up.
Yeah, and I would also say that what Christine says, when we have an applicant who is now moving into a space that was previously occupied by a liquor license applicant, we ask the staff here, what's the history?
Yeah.
Are there noise complaints? Yeah, because that goes into our decision-making in the current applicant of what happened before. And we didn't have any of that. We didn't have any of that.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Also, what we do, because when we do, Hector, when we do a complete denial, even like the letter that Tina did, when we do a complete denial, we do have that thought, well, they may not listen to us, they being the SLA, and we always add a little at the end. And if you're stupid enough to approve it, we don't use the word stupid, but if you want, go ahead and approve it, these are the hours we would want. This is the conditions we would want. Because as Christine said, if there's been there a liquor license applicant before, it's very hard to turn one down. The current item number 13, by the way, where we have a complete denial, there used to be a coffee shop there. I don't mean a drinking coffee shop, a place that sold coffee. Never had a license before.
Gotcha. No, I understand your, where you're coming from. It's unfortunate. I mean, because basically this, I mean, I wasn't aware of this. It was just brought to my attention. And unfortunately, I'm looking at 660 people capacity, standing room only, stand-up bars. It's basically going to be a dance club is what it is. And it's got a cabaret license, so obviously there's going to be dancing and loud music. And, I could foresee this getting out of control again, which it has in the past. But okay. I mean, hopefully we can look at least the hours, at least so, we don't have noise complaints and people being kept up at 4 a.m. Because I think that's a little insane. Just adding to the issues we're already having in the neighborhood. I mean, Chelsea Market is right across the street and they're pretty good neighbors and they're pretty respectful. I don't foresee this happening with this business, unfortunately, the way they run it. I mean, they have affiliations with other clubs like Webster Hall, and they've done this numerous times, obviously, with other businesses. So I'm hoping they will be professional about it and handle it properly. But I'd rather have a little bit more assurances up front than just say, God bless you kind of attitude. But all right, thank you.
Hector, just to comment that when Highline Ballroom was open along with One Oak and, the park used to be around the corner. The PD was very active at 17th and 10th and closed, the block was closed. So I think it might, if this does proceed, I just am flagging that there's precedent for the PD to be on site and better manage that block. So think about that from the night perspective. There's a bid in the area you could also talk to about how they could be supportive of better management of the block during the nighttime as well. So just flagging that.
How far north does that bid go?
I love
that. How far north does the bid go?
17th Street.
Oh, so 16th Street is part of the
I will be voting present, not eligible on the item.
I wasn't talking about that. I just want to know the geography.
No, but definitely, Hector, worth a conversation for that hat.
Great, thank you. Appreciate the idea.
Marty?
Thanks, Jeffrey.
Thank you. 2 questions of clarification. On item 6, and maybe somewhere else, I'm used to seeing liquor license, wine license, or amendment. I'm not used to seeing removal. Would you explain what that is? And my second question, I'll just drop them all at once, is on item 13, voting in favor is voting to approve the denial letter.
Yes, Marty. To vote for yes on 13 is to vote for the denial. And removal means they're taking a license from one place to another.
From one owner to another? Or one location to another?
One geography to another, one location to another.
So it lands in our, it's removed from CB3 and it's landing into CB4. And even though we say it's an approval of a removal, it's the approval of the fact that the removal is coming into our neighborhood.
And in effect for us, it's a new location.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yes.
Exactly.
It's new for us.
Okay. Any other questions for Bert on BLP? Thank you, Bert. ACEs, Alan or Kit?
Thank you, Jeffrey. I'm going to turn this over to Leslie, who initiated the letter and did the work on it, please.
Hello, all. This letter is in response to the mayor's implementation of a plant-based menu on Fridays in the public schools. We learned from our discussion that NYC DOE, actually it blew my mind, is the second largest group food provider in the United States, second to the US Army. They prepare meals for about 1 million students a day. So to provide services of this magnitude, I guess foods and ingredients have to be planned and bought way before the school year even starts. And we know this is a real pet issue for the mayor, and the DOE said it's here to stay for this foreseeable future. So we, though we enthusiastically support the initiative of bringing this healthy option to students, we note our suggestions in doing so successfully moving forward. And that's pretty much the basis of the letter.
The DOE basically opens a middle-sized American city every September when they flip the switch to turn the schools on. So thank you for that context, Leslie. Blake and then Twee, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention this letter. I probably wouldn't have voted for it if I knew it would have the enthusiastically support language about the vegan food program. And then my takeaways from the presentation at the meeting was that the DOE is under pretty strict constraints around school meals. Number one, a cost constraint, and we see food prices rising and supply chain difficulties there. Secondly, with staffing, both in terms of particularly under-resourced schools not having the right nutritionists, as well as having a lack of adequate cafeteria staffing. And third is nutrition, which is the factor that tends to fall to the wayside, when there are issues with the other two factors around food costs and cafeteria staff. So, I felt like the vegan food program is not the right prioritization. I don't think meat is incompatible with health. And, I feel like the letter should probably have just focused more on the big issues of needing more funding, as well as needing more staffing, rather than focusing the support on the, mayor's program here.
So to comment on that, the dietitians are actually not school specific. It's DOE as a whole, and the dietitians plan a menu. I don't want to say months and months in advance, and then they buy the ingredients even before, like I said, the school year even starts. Unfortunately, this mayor who is gung-ho on this kind of set a task for DOE, saying kind of move whatever ingredients you have and make it into some vegan plate. So this year is a little bit of a wash as far as they're going forward. The DOE says it's not changing, they're going forward. So we wanted to, as Blake said, mention that we want, as you see in our points, we want it to be staffed appropriately. That has nothing to do, by the way, with this vegan or plant-powered Fridays. They're understaffed anyway. We just threw that in there as well to kind of hit home the point that if you're going to put a little bit of a new menu here, give these people some guidance and some support so it could be done successfully. And as far as nutrition, that is I'm not going to get into a whole big thing about plant-based meat. It's a misnomer. So the DOE works on points for nutrition, and they have to hit certain number of points regardless of what the food is. Protein points, carbohydrate points, all these points. So they assured us that the meals they are serving today hit all these points, or these categories. So we're obviously hoping for more comprehensive planning and meals come September, which they assure us we're doing, but we want to put it in the letter just to make sure.
Twee?
Thank you for that. And Leslie, I really like this letter. I like the paragraph that talks about how it's a positive environmental impact. That's the reason I became a vegan. And from what I understand, whenever I went and purchased anything vegan, it'd actually be cheaper than it would be for any beef or chicken menus because of the shortage there. So, you know, I don't know if the cost is really one of the considerations, but I do agree with the staffing paragraph that you put in there. My question has to do with whether or not we can explain for people who don't know what a brigade scratch cooking pilot is. Everything else seemed self-explanatory, even farm to school, formerly garden to cafe made sense. But I had no idea what brigade scratch cooking pilot was.
That you have to ask Kit. That is a Kit added element. It wasn't necessarily part of our discussion, but Kit thought it important as co-chair, and he's in the world of schools to add it. So I can get back to you on that. It was a late add. Do you mind if I talk to Kit and get back to you on that? Because I don't think he's here today. Alan, did you see Kit here today?
No.
Okay.
It's fine. That was my only comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jessica?
Thank you. I would just add that a lot of the talk right now around food provision, whether it's in schools or in the work of emergency food pantries, is really around cultural and religious sensitivity, which some of these, not all of these things are that, but some of them are, including a vegan diet could be considered a cultural preference. So I just think the letter might be strengthened. I'd be happy to give an edit after this, but just with that addition, because it's the way that people are talking about this right now, and I think will give greater support or motivation to consider these recommendations.
That would be wonderful, Jessica. If you could just send me that, perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. And to ACEs on this letter. Transportation planning, Dale.
Hi, everyone. Transpo has 5 letters this month. 15 is our letter to Hudson River Parks Trust about pedestrian conditions in front of and around Chelsea Piers. A letter to DOT about a hotel loading zone for the Civilian Hotel on 48th Street. DOT letter about congestion at 11th Avenue and 42nd Street, some solutions offered. 18, a letter to the Port Authority about congestion on 9th Avenue and the Lincoln Tunnel impacts. And 19, a letter to the MTA Tina wrote, thank you, Tina, about proposed subway enclosures. And we do have some friendly changes, amendments, clarifications from within the committee and also from Betty that we will be incorporating, but nothing substantial to the thrust of the letters, just to make them clearer and better.
Thanks, Dale. Anybody, Paul?
Questions?
2 things. On the letter on the 42nd Street and 11th Avenue, I've given Erica's statements tonight during the elected officials commentary. I didn't read the letter well enough to know if there have to be any changes made to reflect what she announced, that the DOT has approved those changes. And if that needs to be incorporated in the letter, just flagging that. I don't know the answer to that question.
It probably, yeah. It sounds like it should. We should update the letter to reflect that condition.
And then I also sent some notes to Christine earlier about one of the letter with some edits on that one too.
Oh yes, thank you. I saw those as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Twee?
I have comments on 16, 17, 18, 19. On 16, on line 18, you say the current regulation is no standing and the requested usage is a hotel loading zone. What is the difference?
So a hotel loading zone allows for passenger discharge and also deliveries and such that the hotel would require. And a hotel of this nature with this number of rooms is basically allowed, permitted by DOT regs to have one of these essentially as a right. But they did come to us and request this. Whereas no standing is really supposed to be like a reg that wouldn't allow any, vehicles along the curbside.
So you want more vehicles?
Well, we want a loading zone that the hotel that would serve the hotel's operations.
Okay.
Well, if I may, Tui, when there are hotels, what happens is that there is no, even people are going to be parked at that no standing zone anyway. And so if we don't have a reserve space, the taxis and the buses, etc., are going to double park and block the whole street. So it's always a better idea to have a zone for the loading and unloading of the guests, etc.
Okay, and thank you. And then for 17, let's see, line 28, we're talking about suggesting drivers to travel east on West 34th Street, turn north on 11th Avenue and enter the tunnel. I'm trying to reconcile the idea of the Penn Station redevelopment. That's outside the zone of Penn Station redevelopment, and anything they want to do there over 10 yards, right?
Yeah, that's by the Javits Center.
Okay. And what is green time? And 35 says request to study the feasibility of reducing the amount of green time. Is that the green light?
It's a green light.
That's the timing of the lights.
Okay, green. Can we say green light time instead? I was thinking environmental again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. I mean, it's commonly understood, but we can make that clarification.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not a common lady. All right, so number 18.
Yeah.
Let's see. For the bullet point in 27 versus the bullet point in line 30, right? It says 27 says reduce the volume and merging conflicts at ramp C by closing Dyer Avenue north of West 34th to West 36th Street. Was there a simulation done? Because it made me think of that when in the second bullet point you say there was a month-long test conducted. Was that suggestion based on?
We know that the Port Authority is interested in doing that, and what they want to do is a test. So by putting that in our letter, we want to encourage them to test that configuration.
For the bullet point number 1?
Yeah.
Could we say that to encourage them to do it?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, because that's good. That's good information. Thank you.
We said above, a variety of measures could be explored. We didn't tell them to, do it. We said you should explore those things.
But what you just said now is that they seem to be on board to try to do a test. I think if we mention that, that would help.
Oh, no. We don't want to do that because some people in the Port Authority are not in favor. So we have factions.
We don't want to seem like we're in collusion with elements of the Port Authority. We want to seem like we want it to appear, which is true, that this is our own assessment of what would improve conditions, rather than, hey, we've been talking to some of your guys and we think this and we want to push this in this way.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the thing is, if it is your own assessment, my question is, what is that assessment based? Because was there a simulation done with, computer simulation, or we assumed if we closed our avenue,
the assessment which was done is that about, 3 months or 4 months ago, the Port Authority was closing close some items, that lane, in order to install the overpass, right? The zip information. And they rerouted that to 10th Avenue or to other places, and it was very successful. So we know that it has been done and it has worked.
Right. I think adding something like that would help. Saying where you've seen it in the past when it actually had happened. That's why we wanted to.
That's a good point. We'll do it.
Also, that intersection is literally outside my door. And I can tell you just based on empirical observations, and also that the traffic agents do routinely close it based on loads, like traffic volume, and redirect pedestrian vehicular traffic to the way we're suggesting. So this is more of like a suggestion of a more long-term solution.
Yes. We'll add the sentence, a good idea.
And then for 19, a couple of questions. 944 on page 1, there was a mention about looking into high-tech ways to spot intrusions on the subway track using TIDS, the track intrusion detection systems. It's fancy, but how does it work? Does anyone know?
Well, we don't know everything, and that's why we're asking them to come and present to us. It's in the middle of a very complicated report, and what we want is them to come and say, explain to us everything.
I believe it works on, it uses some sort of motion detected, like motion sensor system to detect any, potential problems on the tracks. But I don't know in more detail than that.
Well, I mean, appreciate you guys going through that 4,000 page report. It's just, I would guess something like that too, but if we add something, it seems to be working on sensors, but have you seen it in other places the way you said, something that describes it a little bit more. The last comment I have was page 2, line 50. I'm very much a proponent of formal writing. So I would request that instead of saying we'd, we would say we would, therefore, also like to know whether we'd, therefore, sounds a little too colloquial or informal.
Sure.
Okay. And when you have those comments, which are, you can always send it to us in advance and we can respond if you want.
Yeah, okay. I don't know if I can do that though, but thanks for taking them now.
It saves time on the floor of the meeting if they're sent in advance, which is what a lot of other folks do.
Okay, I only have 2 minor comments, but thank you.
Sure. Wendy.
Just a quick question for letter 19, the budget numbers that are cited, how many stations does that cover?
So the study that's referred to in that letter itemized the number of stations where it would be even feasible to do it, and it's not every station. I don't remember the exact number, but it's a narrowed down list of eligible stations. I think it's on the order of 340 or so stations.
Okay.
So
thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Wendy. Any other questions for transportation? Okay, executive committee. 2 items coming out of there this evening. The first one I'm going to pass over to our second vice chair, Leslie, to talk us through the response to the mayor's budget.
Thank you, Jeffrey. This is the big fish, I guess. Each year, as everyone knows here, we have the opportunity to provide comment on what we think are budget priorities directly affecting our district. This request list, the statement district needs, are then submitted to the mayor's office and each relevant agency. I'll just give like a small little background so people who don't know is that we send this list every year. And then recently we received the response to our requests. And then, as you've heard in the public session, that the mayor released his general preliminary budget. So this letter is our response to the city's response. And it also includes comment on the mayor's budget proposals in whole. So let me start by saying, I guess for us in CB District 4, I'm actually happy to say that many of our housing asks were granted, which is amazing. Housing is always almost our #1 priority. So this administration's attention to those particular needs in our district, at least, not citywide, just our district, is appreciated, and it's noted in this letter. Most notably, we have been requesting adequate capital subsidies for NYCHA Harborview Terrace site. So we will most certainly be following up regarding the RFP and the designation of a developer there. We are also moving ahead on the Slaughterhouse site RFP, which was previously announced, which provides 100% permanently affordable housing. That's also another win. This administration is also granting capital subsidy for senior supportive housing at Hartley House. So these are all housing asks from this board, which are granted. So we're going to take those as big wins in housing. It's also notable that some of our transportation requests, especially regarding disabled specific improvements, are scheduled to begin work, such as ADA ramp, curb ramps, audible pedestrian signals. But overall, other than those, housing is a big one, but it really is in contrast to the rest of our asks. The mayor is either cutting budgets or not reinstating programs to pre-COVID levels, affecting many of our asks. And for the best examples of that, we can look at items, let's see, for our #2 and #3 district priorities, public safety and sanitation respectively, which you probably heard from Katie Savage spoke to, Gail spoke to a little bit of it. So in this letter, we reiterate our concerns and requests, and we continue to do this down the line with our agency asks. This was presented at exec, and the letter has been slightly amended. And I'll just give you the most notable ones. We added a paragraph on arts funding in response to the recent announcement that DCLA will lose about $72 million, about a third of its total budget, which is a big hit on the arts. So we added a mention for that. And then we also did add a line regarding the cutting of the parks budget, as you heard earlier from Borough President Levine. After a campaign promise of committing 1% of the city's budget to parks from the mayor. So we added that line as well, that we want that promise to be held to. Some of the other edits were more tweaking language. Oh, and by the way, we also noticed that some of the punctuation was removed or shifted when we transferred formats. So don't worry, that all be corrected before the final version goes out. It was just the transferring of some formats, but Jesse and I will go over those little tweaks before it goes out. I do want to mention one thing though. I'm presenting this, but it's Jeffrey, Christine. These are the budget task force people who contributed. Were Jeffrey, Christine, Bert, Alan, Jessica, Sabrina, Maria, Lowell, and Dolores. So even though I'm here presenting, pretty much everyone wrote the letter.
Oh, you're the chair of the task force, Madam Chair, so you get to present it. Thank you for that, Leslie. And of course, as always, to the budget task force and to the committees that take this work up.
So any questions?
Any questions for Leslie? Tweet?
Thank you. And I'm looking at page 2, line 18. This has to do with what we discussed before, the DOB Special District Code Enforcement, and to update the DOB website to flag improper demolition permits. I appreciate the idea that over 100 residential units were demolished over the last 5 years under this. I think a natural question might be, what happened to those units? Were they replaced with bright, shiny units that were, less used units? Were they replaced with commercial housing? It's not really clear.
So it wasn't 100 units, it's been 100 buildings that have been demolished in the Special Clinton District, largely based on demo or demo by neglect.
Well, it says 100 residential units, though.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, Jeffrey, it's units, it's units.
Oh, I apologize. Okay.
Yeah, units. Sure, I mean, they're all individual buildings. We can certainly try to find out where they all are now. Some of them are actually have, as JD mentioned in his letter, in the letter from the first item, is we've been working with some of them to actually continue to have affordable housing in them. And so we certainly can give you some positive examples and unfortunately some negative examples.
Okay, thank you. And then on page 5 of 6, 926, resurface a heavily used dog run at DeWitt Clinton Park. I guess the question has to do with participatory budgeting, because that was also a proposal under participatory budgeting to, if people wanted to vote, that could be part of it. I think it's similar to, you know, adding trees or maybe not park space, but would we just want to ask for both, you know, here as well as in participatory budgeting, like keep it?
Well, Tweez, the participatory budgeting has nothing to do with our asks. I mean, it does a little bit where you would think the council members would look at what the district needs are and kind of hear from the residents and put it on their participatory budget slate.
Mm-hmm.
But this ask was, I think, Jeffrey, wasn't this 2 years ago? Even it was an ask 2 years ago, and then it's a continuing ask. And I think that you're right. It's on participatory budgeting this year, but I think this is the first year that it is. But I mean but it might not get approved through participatory budgeting. We should still ask for it through the appropriate agency, and hopefully that will come through with funding one way or the other.
Yeah, it sounds like it's okay to have that overlap. And then on page 6 with the bullet points for security cameras for schools, do we have, I mean, are these all the schools within CB4, or is it just because they have security problems? Because then later you say just do a door system at another PS. Like how do we know between the different things?
So what we do, and since you asked about education, I'll specifically speak about education. We reach out to principals. We try and do a little bit of legwork, at least each committee does. In this case, for example, PS 111, they specifically need ADA accessible gymnasium and auditorium. And that's what they prioritized. And that's what they ask us to ask for. They all might need it, but maybe other schools need something else more higher on the priority. So we want to reflect their asks.
Well, they also asked for the security cameras. I just noticed that in one place you put Adolf S. Ox and the other you didn't, but it's the same school, right?
I'm sorry.
One is 11 and one is 111, I think.
No, they're both 111.
No, so
point number 1. Okay.
So wait, what?
Sorry.
So 111 is the elementary school. Sorry, Jesse, go ahead. I didn't hear you. Go ahead, Jesse.
No. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Yes, the answer is yes, Twee. We, as Leslie explained, we do it. The committee does it a bunch of different ways, but we reach out to principals. We also have like group meetings with the superintendents, and so the security camera request came from a group of schools asking for security cameras. The request for the ADA access came from one of those schools that wasn't part of that group, but as an individual request. So the security camera request came from a larger group of schools that were there at a meeting that we had. At the same time, we're having conversations with individual principals. And so that's why those groupings are the way they are.
Okay, but shouldn't it be reading the same if it's the same school? So bullet point number 1 for Leslie, bullet point number 1 says PS 111 Adolf S. Ox 440 West 53rd Street.
Yes,
bullet
we
point
can,
number 3.
we can match the name of the school.
Okay. I guess the only other question was elevator replacement, system. Do people want to know how long the elevator has not been replaced? The HVAC.
For which one? I'm sorry, Twee, which one?
For the 4th elevator replacement at Bayard Rustin. Do people want to know it has been replaced for 20 years? Similarly with an auditorium HVAC system that hasn't been replaced for 30 years. Like, do people want to know in terms of the urgency?
So we have our list of district needs, and those go into more detail. Each is a line item, and then it says what the line item is, and then we give a little bit of an elaboration, and then they come back and they give their response. When we do this letter, usually is we don't go through the whole, we don't do exactly go into detail like we did in our statement of district needs. We kind of bullet point it because they already have our full document.
Okay.
So that's it's just more for editing purposes. more than anything.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Roberta?
Roberta?
Oh, sorry, Jeffrey.
Yeah, sure. So I wanted to take a look specifically under public safety, the 9 traffic officers ask. The first, I had a question and then I have a comment. So the first question that I have is about illegal electric bikes. And I'm trying to just understand what that actually means. Is that class 2 and 3 e-bikes? Is that gas-powered mopeds? What does that mean? Or what is the intent of that? I don't know if anyone could answer that question.
I'm sorry, Roberta, what number are we
That's on line 12 of the public safety, the 9 traffic officers. And it's just like a little thing about illegal e-bikes. I'm trying to figure out what about the e-bikes is illegal that we're concerned about. Just trying to understand that.
I think it's so we did a survey, what was it about, Christine, what was it, like a year ago or 2 years, the top priorities, and
1 year ago.
Yeah, then when we got the responses, this was on it too. This e-bikes, Roberta, I don't think it's necessarily just e-bikes in general. I think it's where they ride. Do they ride the wrong way? I think we included e-bikes just for purposes of thoroughness.
I think
the reality is that the feedback we are getting from the community, many people coming to the transportation committee, because the e-bikes are going faster than the other bikes, they are more sensitive to the heel behavior when there is one. So if they are going the wrong way, if they are going, if they are running the red light, etc., it becomes the focus. And we have had a number of people coming in. So the answer is that it's like trying to get people to behave properly. And I don't think it's necessarily e-bike, but it definitely touches a nerve in the population.
So may I make a recommendation, or I think this would likely be friendly. It's not the e-bikes themselves that are illegal, it's e-bikes.
No, it's illegal. It's illegal behavior. Illegal behavior of cyclists and in particular e-bike because they go faster. So we could change that language if you want.
Yeah, I think it would just be helpful to explain that it's the behavior, not the actual vehicle, that is illegal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the sort of comment I did want to make, because I think it's a thing that I've heard, or a refrain that I've heard both in this community and then in other parts of Manhattan, where people are very concerned about e-bikes, particularly delivery cyclists, and bring these complaints and try and spur traffic enforcement. And that puts people, delivery cyclists who are largely working for major delivery companies, into contact with law enforcement. Many of these folks have questionable immigration status or wage workers, and if that piece has kind of been weighed, pros versus cons of that type of enforcement action, specifically using traffic police officers for that purpose.
It is a problem. And we don't have a real good answer for that. It's like, okay, are we going to let everybody, drive illegally, whether they are in a car or a cyclist, or based on the color of the skin, everybody can do that. And it's very unfortunate that it would result in those interactions and that the police would target more of that, but I don't know, we don't know what to do about it.
I think that's fair. I assume there's never been either other types of enforcement that are unrelated to police, and then secondarily, if there's a way to add language acknowledging that problem, that there is like a genuine justice issue of who we criminalize for.
I think we could do that.
actions.
I don't know whether that letter is really the right
I don't know if this
letter,
is where the.
because that letter
No, I
is
think that's
really a
Christine, if I
summary
may- if I may
about
just on
the
this.
budget.
So,
I mean, we have
Roberta,
made those.
Christine, hold on one sec. All germane and appropriate, but to keep, if we can just do the first tweak on clarifying the e-bike operation and what we are deeming illegal, not the vehicle, but the way it's driven. But then to your point on the justice issue, I think that is something that can come, like that needs to work its way through. So that way, when we have a budget process again, it is a part of our budget language, right? In accordance with our approach. Josephine.
I just wanted to follow up on the High School of Environmental Science, Leslie. I think a letter was done from this committee some time ago about the leaks in the roof. Also, there was an elevator, and I don't think that they got funding because there was a lease issue. And I think Katie can talk about that a little bit more, but if we can, I would like to add them as well. Katie, do you have anything that you wanted to add?
It's a really good point, Josephine, that we should update this, but I don't have the exact language in front of me from the letter we did, but I could find that and then forward it maybe. I don't know what the right process is here.
So Josephine, Allen's on this called as the,
I think
we pick a few that we still have, there's a lot more they did not fund that we could, I mean, we could, the list can go on, right? Of all of our asks.
Yeah, but in terms of the high school, in terms of the roof, I think that was resolved already.
The lease issue was resolved.
Yeah, that was resolved.
So that was the real holdback for the fund for any major capital funding, but the lease issue was successfully moved forward.
So they
have we heard confirmation that the money was then allocated?
Yeah, I think it should be in some emails. I think we got a whole slew of emails from them.
Well, I don't want to promise.
Have to go look,
I know we know the lease issue is resolved. I cannot confirm where the status of both of those are significant capital projects, as we know, and so I don't know where they are in those statuses.
Yeah, I would just like for us to follow up with them to see if those projects have been funded, because honestly, they're even more important than the security cameras. I mean, those schools asked for that quite some time ago. I don't even know what's happening with that, but the High School for Environmental Science, they need the elevator for, for individuals who can't use the stairs. I mean, they have people who were, carrying students up flights of stairs because they could not walk up the stairs. And also the roof, the leaking roof was an issue. So definitely, I'd like to follow up on that.
We can definitely do that.
Alan?
We can, yeah. And Josephine, just so you know, that what is in this particular letter is reflects the priorities, how we list them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That, Leslie, I was going to flag that. This is our list is much more exhaustive.
Yeah.
Right, our statement of district needs, from which this letter derives, is much more extensive. These are the issues that bubble to the top, that based on the committee recommendations and budget task force negotiations are highlighted in terms of the biggest priority needs. So it's not just these items that we have on our list. Any final questions for Leslie? Great. Thank you,
Jeffrey. I do want to mention one thing if I can. So for people who might not know, the way we work in the budget process, it continues through the year. And so towards the end of the year, the board will draw up a statement of district needs, as we just mentioned, for the next fiscal year. So a usual prerequisite of this or inclusion on that list, outside of a previous ask, is that it was brought up in discussion or presented at committee. So if anyone has a thought for a need or for our district, talk to Jesse or a co-chair just about the procedure of getting it on a committee agenda for discussion, because sometimes, and Jeffrey knows this too, at the end, people are like, well, can we add this or can we add that? And if it really wasn't discussed in committee, it's hard to do.
Right.
I understand that, but this we actually wrote a letter about it. That's why I'm bringing it up now.
This is just broadly that.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about in general for across the board.
Yeah, we don't put something in our budget asks unless the board has taken a position on it, is the way to think about it. So thank you for that framing, Leslie, and stay tuned for more on budget issues and updates as the council and the mayor do their dance going forward as well. Final item on the agenda, Executive Committee memo to MCB4. This, first of all, I once again want to thank Jesse for his diligence and excellent work on this. We had a lengthy discussion at the Executive Committee meeting last Monday night, because we are at a real flashpoint here, folks, and there is no solution that meets everybody where they are. And I think we as a committee, as a board, often acknowledge that, quite frankly, that sucks, that we don't have the ability to always do that, even though we typically plan and try to do that as a board. Right now, that's just not the case. So the proposal that we're going to be moving forward with is summarized in that memo. Our committee meetings will be executed after April 15th of this month in a hybrid fashion, meaning members of the committee are expected to attend the meetings in person at the community board's district office in order to be counted to vote at the meeting and counted towards quorum in the meeting. The public will be strongly encouraged to participate virtually. The board office has a system that can get everybody that's there on camera, the members of the committee to participate, and then have folks who are participating via Zoom, raise their hand. We would manage the function much like we do on the squares here. It would be done with folks, in the board office managing it that way, with members of the public participating virtually. Likewise, we would encourage any applicants to participate virtually. And while technically we cannot tell them to show up in person, we're going to encourage that only members of the committee are there in person to limit the number of people that are in the board office. That's committees. In addition to that, we're also going to be circulating a more detailed, what we are referring to as a good neighbor policy. We cannot require vaccination. We cannot require masking, but what we can ask is for folks to be a good neighbor. And this virus is still subjecting a lot of New Yorkers, a lot of our neighbors, to challenges that many of us are not aware about because of immunocompromised issues, of health issues that are just not always on the surface. And so we're going to be encouraging folks to recognize and take into consideration the good health practices that so many of us have been executing on for the past 2 years, to carry that into our committee meetings as well going forward in person. And then finally, full board. Full board, we will be doing in person. Members of the board will be expected in person. And again, members of the public can attend, but they will be strongly encouraged to attend and participate virtually. Again, that good neighbor policy, we would be circulating and encourage everybody to follow as well, though unfortunately, the board can't issue any mandates based on the legal guidance we've received from the city. This is challenging. It is not without cost. Thankfully, Jesse, last year, we purchased the abilities to have our full board meetings have professional management of them for the execution and videotaping of that process. But this is what's before us. This keeps us within the letter of the law, which we think is very important. And again, as I said at the top of the meeting, we beg patience and indulgence and appreciate everybody's understanding as we figure out how we'll stand this up. Jesse, anything else to add there?
Yeah, a couple of things. One thing I want to apologize for is I realized the memo in the Dropbox references an additional memo to the executive committee, and it's not attached. So I'm happy to answer any questions about what's referenced in the memo that you do have that does not have the attachment as it should. And I can certainly circulate that in advance. And that was sort of, the memos are very similar. There's a little more detail as to the cost of, right now, the cost of trying to hold in-person committee meetings at different locations using a third-party vendor to try to basically provide hybrid, which is very, very costly at this point. And I will just say, as I said to the executive committee, there's a lot of gray area in between all of these options. And so I know that there's a lot of new technology and a lot of ideas of where we could meet and things like that. What I'm trying to do, what I was trying to do, and what I'm trying to communicate is to provide the most pragmatic and the most secure way of doing this. And so I'm open to having further discussions on this as an operational component of how the board and the committees work. And if people want to get more involved in this, then I welcome that. But as in terms of just how to be doing this meeting, as Jeffrey said, following the rules and also trying to provide as much health protections for you guys and the public as well. But I can answer any questions.
Sabrina?
I guess it's just a legal question. I know that we're volunteers, right? But the city has a mandate for city employers where they have to have vaccinated. There's no way that we fell into that category.
No. I mean, we mean in terms of that, can we require you all to be vaccinated?
Folks to be vaccinated, yeah.
No. You're not employees.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Sabrina.
I mean, your paycheck would tell you different, right?
Right. Our bank accounts are flush with community board income.
Institution of the government. It's just volunteered. But anyway, that's an argument for another day.
We're another caveat to that is that we're technically not a mayoral agency. So while technically we are an agency, we are not a mayoral agency. And so we don't fall under, if the mayor says all agencies have to do Y, we don't necessarily fall under that mandate.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Carrie?
I just want to say thanks, Jesse, for trying to figure out what is the best of all evils and making that happen for us. And I know this is just a memo to ourselves, but I think that maybe it's worthwhile to just say out loud that we should continue to press our elected officials to change the open meeting laws and not let this become status quo. I mean, some of I have my own reasons for needing this to be virtual now, but also, the participation that we've seen from the community has been so much greater since we've been on Zoom that I really think we need to continue to make this a real important, primary issue for our officials. Thanks.
Yeah, I agree. And just to be clear, I think I did as explained in the memo, the executive committee did recommend this be temporary. So we are, hoping that, by the summer, we'll be in a different place in a lot of different ways, both policy wise and hopefully, public health wise, and things we can hopefully take a reevaluation of this. So yeah.
Jesse, Marty?
I really appreciate the hard work that you folks have put into this. I have a couple of objections. I think you have erred too much on trying to follow the law rather than to meet the needs of several individuals on this board who probably shouldn't attend full board meetings. That said, I will abstain on this vote because I don't want to stand in the way of your progress.
Thanks, Marty. David?
Hi, yes, Jesse, thank you for all your hard work on this. I have a quick logistical question, which you might have answered. I missed it. The full board meeting, will that be at the district office?
No. So right now, our full board meetings are scheduled to be at the Fulton Auditorium, which we normally have held them there. We would normally hold them off and on between Fulton and Mount Sinai West. If and when Mount Sinai West's conference room becomes available, we certainly can utilize that as well. But that's where they would be held currently. Once if and once the emergency order is not renewed and open meetings law goes into effect.
Hey, thank you.
Betty?
Yes, and thank you, Jesse. What a gigantic challenge to write it all down. I have a quick question about the conference room, which I've never seen in the district office where we're going to have our committee meetings.
Sure.
How many people can be accommodated in that room?
Well, that's a tricky question. So, I mean, if you're talking about just what the occupancy is, it's pretty significant. It's a sizable office space. The way I was viewing this space is that because we cannot necessarily require people to wear masks, you all members of the board can, like Jeffrey said, be a good neighbor to each other and choose to wear masks if you want. And we cannot require vaccination status. Really what our sole protection is the CDC guidelines and the other health agencies guidelines around social distancing. And so that really does limit the capacity to a room. And so what we're trying to do is to be able to allow the committees to meet safely. So I'm hoping to get there. I'm hoping that's where we're going to be at, and I think we can get there. Again, if this is a temporary action, if if we do this and it doesn't seemingly as a group, as a body, does not seem to be the best way to go forward, we'll have to reassess. I mean, nothing is stopping us from meeting in person. There's nothing saying that you can't. We can go back to the way we would do it prior to COVID, but that there's difficulty in that, in making that hybrid, giving the remote access. That's the issue for that. So I hope that answers the question. I can get you, I can certainly get you like specific numbers to like capacities of what the room is, but none of those capacities had like the mindset of if we're trying to maximize social distancing in it. So I could try to figure that out for you, but I don't know.
I guess I was wondering about, would we be all packed in right close to each other? That was one thing.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, sometimes Chelsea Landry has some very controversial topics where a zillion people want to speak. But if that was the case, obviously we would prefer that they are on Zoom, but then would we be turning people away from the room or downstairs at the lobby? We say, okay.
Yeah. So
nobody can come into the room now or something. It's a little awkward,
It is awkward. I mean, as Jeffrey said, there's not one solution that's going to really be the one that's going to hit everything. And so it does need to be, it is a public meeting. There does need to be people, can be able to participate in it. If they want to show up in person, they can show up in person. We're going to try to strongly recommend that they use the hybrid option. We're going to we are going to have an RSVP system to hopefully, if there are people that are wanting to show up. Again, this is the point I'm making about with that, because it's a right to walk into a public meeting that way, and I can't have any requirements around the actions of the public. Then it's the CDC guidelines, which is social distancing, which then limits the capacity of the room. If it's already got, let's say, 14 people in it for committees, by committee members, that really does limit the capacity of the room. So yeah, I will say, if we do run into those scenarios which we have done in the past as well, where we've usually met in certain rooms that we know have a certain capacity, but we do know next month we're going to have a very controversial land use item, we'll have to get a bigger room. We might have to do that. We might have to then say, okay, we're gonna have to step away from this space and try to get the Fulton Auditorium. We'll try to get the Google space that we were able to get for a while, things like that. And so Hotel Trades Council as well. So, and
that's a good backup if we have some really
no, we have that as backups. I mean, I will say also we have spaces for most committees already kind of on the books for other locations if we need them.
Okay, that's good.
But
Okay,
again, I just want to be clear, it's not going to be, we cannot just turn that space into a hybrid situation, automatically.
Thank you, Betty. Roberta?
well,
Go on.
Okay.
What's up?
Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, I thought that the way you're looking at this is that we committee members are in the conference room. Then there's a screen in the room that is for the people on Zoom and that we can see them talking. Is that not so?
Yeah, so you're going to see them. You'll have a screen up on the wall and you'll see what you're looking at right now, right?
Right.
And one of those little boxes will be all of you. So if you can imagine.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Roberta?
Betty basically just asked my question, but I just confirming, I guess the way that we speak back to the public via Zoom is via a microphone or something like that in the room. That's how we're able to communicate with one another.
Yeah, so what we're gonna have is what's called Owl Meeting Pro, and so it's a pretty it's one of the more advanced conference room kind of setup situations. It's an all-in-one device. It has a 360-degree camera on it. It has sound tracking. So if you start talking, Roberta, it will get to you. It might not get to you like super quick because it has a traction, it's a machine, but it will get to you. And so then it'll focus on you. If two people are speaking, going back and forth, it'll split the camera. There's multiple cameras in it actually. So you'll be able to see like side by side people talking, plus then in the 365. Yes, and there's a speaker in that and a microphone in that both. So that's the whole thing. And then you will have a large screen on the wall that is projecting the Zoom that you would normally see.
I have heard that Jesse, Janine, and Nellie are choosing to play different characters of each of us in the rehearsal of the Owl Pro camera at the district office. Leslie, you're next. Sorry.
Thank you for the work on this. My question is kind of basic. With the district office, what is the ventilation like? Does it meet standards?
So, I mean, I don't want to promise anything. There's full AHV in the system, and we have a number of air purifier machines that we bought when this whole thing started. So we would be using those as well in the office. And there's windows. We have a whole row of windows as well.
Thank you.
And just remember, everybody, we're not on 42nd Street anymore. We're in a fully renovated building right on the edge of Hudson Yards, just to mention the space. Mike.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, I just wanted to suggest something to you. There are a lot of meetings that are held where lots of people show up and can't make it into the room. What they do is they line them up outside. They take the speakers and then they shuffle them out and other people come in. So if you look ahead and find a meeting that you think is going to have 100 community members showing up to, you can pick a venue that that you can keep folks lined up outside. Something like a poll site, for example, right? Same thing we do there. And line with that, I don't know if you guys have been looking at Hudson Guild on 26th Street as a place, because that Carpenter Center there is big. It's awfully big. And the more you can get Ken Jockers on board with us, the better.
Ken Jockers has been unbelievably instrumental. To be honest with you, they have, if you remember in July, when we all of a sudden had to go into full in-person meetings instantaneously, that was Ken Jockers saying, use our space whenever you need it. Ken Jockers has said, use our space, trust me, me and Ken we have each other's cells. So
yeah,
no, I want to be clear. It's not about space. It's not about finding the space. And I don't want to complicate things tonight, but if we feel, we did something, we did it a certain way before COVID, right? And if that is the way, if eventually that is the way the board wants to go, that completely meets the letter of the law, and it clearly provides you guys to do the work that you need to do. It's about that hybrid component to it. And so I think Carrie is right. We need to continue to advocate while we're doing all of this to say, if we want to get to that point where we have really open, safe spaces that everybody feels, socially distanced and has the right air and all of those things, but also has that option, right? That's going to take a lot of work and money to figure that out.
And the other thing too, Jesse, is that some of us may not be showing up at some of the earliest in-person meetings, right? You're aware of that. So that does not mean to say that as time goes on, the concerns that keep us away won't have gone away, right?
Like, as I noted in the beginning, that the importance of attendance has to do with quorum and the ability to vote. And so you or anybody that is not comfortable attending in person can dial in and participate. However, they technically would not count towards quorum and they would not be able to vote. So that's sort of the hang up, but it doesn't disallow participation.
Right. Well, I hope there's a lenient excusal standard going on here.
Thank you, JD.
And not only that, I don't know where it exists in the law, state level or bylaws. You can't vote by proxy, right? There's a consideration.
Thank you.
Proxy.
Thank you. JD.
Yeah, thank you both, Jesse and Jeffrey. I know it's very complicated. A clarification here for Jesse. You say we are not under the mayor. We're an agency, but not under the mayor. So the mayor is protecting his agencies. Who are we under then?
We are not employees of the city, is what it really comes down to.
But we are under the borough president. That's what we are. Yes.
We are in some ways. We are in some ways, and we are not in others. And I preface this with that's what makes the community board a community board, is that we're not necessarily controlled by a specific branch of government, right? That's inherently what makes us so unique and powerful, and be able to provide an independent voice. And so that's the system. The problem is when that runs up into something like this, where, right, there isn't any, there are, what rules we have to follow are kind of patchwork through multiple different bodies, open meetings law, city law, things like that. But there's not a direct, we are our own independent little component, but we do have to follow, like other boards and other entities have to follow different requirements. And so one of those is, I sent this memo around much earlier, and I'll send it again, which is the Mark Levine's office did a very good memo in explaining what we can kind of require and what we cannot require. And it's a right to walk into a public meeting like this. And so because it's a right, it's not, you're not saying, oh, come to my agency, and if you come to my agency, you have to be vaccinated or wear a mask.
Dolores?
I think Leslie had his hand up, no?
I'm sorry.
I think that's a holdover.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi. I want to say that all of this has always been in flux, and we've been in uncharted waters. So I'd like to call the question, because we're going to have to work this out as we go along. Thank you to Jesse.
Laura.
Thank you to all of exec for doing incredible work to be thoughtful about every angle. So I'm going to call the question because I don't think that we get to perfect.
And I'll just say, can I just say one last thing? I apologize. I really appreciate all of the thanks. I really appreciate all the thanks. I just want to be able to say repeat what Jeffrey said at the beginning. We are, and what Laura said, we are in uncharted waters. And so there will be, mistakes. Clearly, as of this morning, most of you got 35 emails from me, things like that. But clearly, and if we're going forward and we're recognizing, people are uncomfortable or not feeling, this is the right direction, we will reassess and we will figure this out. And so,
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Dolores. So with that, we are going to move to our voting portion of the meeting, which I'm going to pass over to the co-secretaries, but I want to just summarize because item 2, I think I want to, Jesse, can we vote on the amendment first? And then if that stands, we can make the voting process just more straightforward. Can we vote on the amendment for item 2 first to determine if that passes or fails? And then we'll vote as a package. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Then I just think people need to understand that when you're voting for item 2 on your vote sheet,
I was going to explain that if it passed or failed.
Okay. All right. That's fine. Yes, you can do
Can
that.
you send the vote sheets around again? I can't find mine.
Sure.
Janine, or no?
Thank you.
Yeah, it was Jesse.
Jeffrey, would you mind just repeating what
Yes.
we're voting for? Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for the tee up, Carrie. So the first thing we're going to vote on is the amendment, the alternative letter that was presented by David in the Chelsea Land Use Committee, which is item 2. And the current item 2 accepts the proposal to install gates on West 20th Street. The new letter that we're going to vote on first would reject that proposal. If that item passes, we're going to swap out the letter you received in your packet with the new letter to reject the proposal. So we're going to do a roll call on the amendment to begin with. That amendment would reject the gates proposed for the townhouses on West 20th Street. Christine.
So to summarize right now, if we vote yes, it means we reject.
Correct. So you're voting for the letter that rejects the proposal. So
and that's the yes.
Exactly. Right. So a yes means rejection of the application because we're voting on the amendment. And then we'll take up everything else. So with that, this is a yes is to reject the proposal. A no is to basically move the other letter forward is what that's going to mean. So Katie, Blake.
Yep, I'll go through the roll just on this one question, alphabetical by last name. So Ted Arenas, Roberta Barnett.
I'm voting no.
Got it. Roberta.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
Gwen, Leslie,
Yes.
Viren,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Marty,
Yes.
Paul,
No.
Tina,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Jesse,
Yes.
Candace,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Frank,
Frank's not here.
Thanks, yeah.
Josephine,
Yes.
Peggy,
No.
Carrie,
Yes.
Lowell.
Not here.
I'm voting no. Bert,
No.
Chris,
Abstention.
Jeff. Well, I'll come back to Jeffrey. Betty,
No.
Sarah,
No.
Tina,
Yes.
Mike,
No.
JD,
No.
Maria,
Maria's not here.
No, I'm here.
Oh,
Can you
I'm
hear
sorry,
me?
Maria.
I'm sorry. Yes.
I thought you emailed us that you weren't going to be here tonight.
No, it was next week.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Blake. I'm saying yes.
Okay, great. Alan,
No.
Brad,
Abstain.
Twee,
Yes.
Joe,
Not here.
Sabrina,
Yes.
Dolores,
No.
David.
Yay.
No.
Sorry, David Solnick,
No.
Katie,
Yes.
Kit,
Not here.
Hector,
Yes.
Rinal,
No.
Rob Walker,
Is he still here?
He's here.
Dolores, you're on mute.
He's
He's
here.
right here.
Yeah.
Rob?
Sorry, I wasn't talking to you guys. Sorry.
I can come back. James Wallace,
Yes.
David Warren,
Yay.
Leslie Williams,
Yes.
and Alice.
Staying.
Is Rob Walker off of mute?
We don't know.
He's here off mute. We just can't see him.
Yeah, he's on by phone.
Blake, I'm voting yes.
Okay, so yes has it with 25 to 13 no's and 3 abstains.
So thank you for running that. Thank you, everybody, for your patience on this. This effectively means item 2 is now swapped out with the new letter.
Can
We're
you hold
going
on?
Go ahead,
Okay.
Jesse, sorry.
I think I have Rob Walker just in attendees. I'm going to move him over real quickly.
Sure.
Rob, is that you? Rob, you have to unmute if that's you.
Hey, can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Okay, good. I vote yes for the last one. Sorry.
Okay, 26 yes, 13 no, 3 abstain.
So how do we fill the form?
So, Christine, that's what I'm going to explain now on our vote sheet. We are going to keep item 2 as the new letter. So we're swapping it out. So the letter item 2 now is what we just voted on to adopt. So your vote sheet stays the same, and item 2, we're swapping in the new letter because that carried with 26 votes in favor.
So presumably the vote, Jeffrey, will be the opposite of what just happened.
No, it's yes.
No,
now.
Yes.
Oh, yes,
we
now it'll be
expect it to
like what
be-
happened, sorry.
We would
Right.
expect it to be the same.
Gotcha, yes, Christine, yep,
Right, yes to the new
Right.
one.
yes.
Got it.
Mike,
Yeah, so Jeffrey, the vote we just did now can be plugged into number 2.
well, so
So-
right, but yes, that's what I'm
Right.
saying, letting everybody know.
Well,
because-
no, hold on. Somebody says no, because abstains, we had some abstentions in there and all. So I guess we do have to do it formally, yeah?
So we're just swapping out the letter, and now we're going to take a roll call, as we always do, for the full package of letters. So when you are called upon, you're going to say yes on all, abstain on 7, no on 12. So like we always do. But what happened with item 2 is that we just are putting in the new letter that we just voted on to swap out. So if you voted no on the item 2 on the previous vote, I would expect you to vote no in the round when we take the full package of letters as well. Does that make sense?
Not necessarily.
That's okay. So, everybody's welcome to change their vote. But just to be clear, item 2 is the letter that we just adopted.
Right.
So Ted.
Okay, I must be a little confused. Okay, so the letter was for gates. They wanted the gates, and that's what everyone voted no against. So now you're putting in a different letter that's going to deny it, and we're going to vote yes to that and not have a letter to actually review. So why are we voting on a letter that we're not going to review for just swapping a yes letter to a no letter?
It's just a matter, it's very much a technicality, but it's because we are changing the position of the committee. And so we have to vote on that new letter, which effectively overrules the committee's position. And so, basically it's just a redrafting of the letter to reject, and that's what will go to the Landmarks Preservation Commission.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Mernal?
Shouldn't we be reviewing the letter before it's sent out?
So this is where, this kind of happens, right? I mean, in effect, given the fact that we are rejecting the proposal, we are now adopting the opposition to the previous letter's position, which was summarized by David, which was debated heavily at committee. And so I think it's very much, right? We're on the opposite side. We knew what the arguments for to accept it. And so now we'll be adopting the arguments against it. Paul.
Sure, but
sorry.
it's not. So is it just going to be a one sentence letter that says now we're because I'm assuming there'd be more to the letter than that, in which case we should probably review it.
In terms of timing, we just don't have that option. The hearing is also way before the next full board, and so, or even the next committee meeting. This is, I will say, this is not typical, but this does happen. Just like new business is brought up at the full board on occasion without a letter, and it's the item is raised and item and the description of the letter is given. So
Thank you, Jesse.
no problem.
That's
Paul, unless Chris wants to call the question.
No, it's just to clarify Murnell's question, in that the letter at the beginning, look at the boilerplate at the beginning, it will say the board is voting to deny the certificate of appropriateness. And then everything that's subsequent to that in the letter, it's really just a denial of the certificate of appropriateness.
Dolores?
Quickly, just to reiterate that, because I think people are concerned about not having the opportunity to review. That main point that Paul just made, that's the major change. The background stays the same. The points that made anybody change their mind on how they voted just now in the roll call were the points that David brought up that will be brought to the forefront. So I don't think that we need to fear as a community that we're signing onto a blank letter. We have all the facts that we've just discussed openly in this meeting, and we're changing the primary portion, which is saying what we are denying.
Thank you, Dolores. Jessica, final question on this before we go to the vote.
Just simply a comment. I know time is tight given the constraints Jesse just mentioned, but if anyone here is interested in seeing the letter and wants to work with, email me separately, we can make sure that you get a copy.
Thank you for that. All right. So again, a yes on item 2 is to reject the proposal. I will now pass it over to Blake and Katie again for the roll on the entire package of letters this evening.
Great. Same list. So Ted.
Yes to all.
Roberta.
Yes to all.
Christine.
Yes to all, and I sent my vote.
Thank you. Gwen. Oh, not here. Leslie Murphy.
Yes to all.
Viren.
Yes to all.
Jessica.
Yes to all.
Dale.
Yes to all.
Marty. Marty.
I was muted, sorry. Abstain on 21, yes to the rest, and I've sent in the document.
Thank you. Paul Devlin.
No on 2, yes on the rest, vote sheet submitted.
Thanks. Tina.
Yes to all.
Pete Diaz.
Yes to all, and documents submitted.
Thanks. Wendy.
Yes to all, vote sheet submitted.
Jesse.
Yes to all.
Candace.
Yes to all.
David Holokwa.
Yes to all.
Frank's not here. Josephine.
No on 7 and yes to the rest.
Peggy.
Sorry, no to 2 and yes to the rest.
Carrie.
Yes to all, abstain on 21.
Lowell, not here. I'm no on 2 and 14. Bert.
No to the new number 2, yes on everything else, all the others.
Chris LeBron.
Aye on all.
Betty.
No on 2, yes to the rest.
Sarah.
No on 2, yes to the rest, vote sheet submitted.
Thank you. Tina.
Yes to all.
Mike.
Yes to all and submitted.
Thank you. JD.
No on 2 and no on 14.
Maria.
Yes to all.
Alan.
No on 2, abstain on 15, yes to the rest.
Brad.
Abstain on 2, yes to the rest.
Twee.
Yes to all, and I click to submit.
Thank you. Joe, not here. Sabrina.
Any on 20th and yes to all.
Dolores.
No on 2, yes to the rest.
David Solnick.
No on 2, yes to the rest.
Katie Stokes.
Yes to all.
Kit. Hector.
No on 7, no on 14, yes to all. Submitted.
Renal.
No on 2, yes on the rest.
Rob Walker.
Yes to all, voting sheet submitted.
Thank you. James Wallace.
Abstain on 21, yes to the rest, and submitted.
Thank you. David Warren.
Yay to all and submitted.
Thank you. Leslie Williams.
No on 7 and 14, and yes to the rest.
And Alice.
Abstain on 2, yes to the rest.
And Jeffrey.
I am present, not eligible on 3 and 7. And yes to the rest. And submitted.
Great. There we go.
Great. Katie, Blank, thank you for the roll, for the votes. Thank you, everybody, for tonight. Dolores, you called the question. I'm going to look to you for a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved. Good night.
Thank you. And good night, everybody. Stay safe.
night.
And,
Bye, guys.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.